difficulty in getting their mouths white again. And then it gives, this is a recipe for blackening your teeth. This makes you glad you're an American woman. Listen to this. Take 3 pints of water and having warmed it, add half a teacupful of wine. Put into this mixture a quantity of red hot iron. Allow it to stand for 5 or 6 days when there will be a scum on the top of the mixture, which should then be poured into a small teacup and placed near a fire. When it is warm, powdered gall nuts and iron filings should be added to it, and the whole should be warmed again. The liquid is then painted onto the teeth by means of a soft feather brush with more powdered gall nuts and iron, and after several applications, the desired color will be obtained. So no matter what cosmetics we ladies use, gentlemen, I think nothing is quite like that.
You think of the breath?
Oh, well, I've heard that Japanese people don't really kiss, and maybe that's why. It doesn't sound particularly attractive, does it? Maybe the reason they did it to their married women is so that they would be, not attractive to other men.
They're not too interested in cosmetic bleaching.
Right. Yeah, I think you would enjoy this one, Donna.
You would have to do that other procedure for them. The blackening thing.
I'd rather wear a wedding ring, quite frankly. So that's just a little Japanese.
What do they do with the brew with the wine if they don't throw that away?
Probably the men drink it away. All that good iron. Well, what did you come up with in your reflections?
Want to read some?
Well, no, just share. Just, if you'd like to share.
This reminded me a lot of that footprints in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of that too.
Yeah.
God there helping us, we don't even know it.
Mm-hmm. So incredibly loving, isn't it? And it's interesting that this, because, this is a prophet speaking to Old Testament people. God is saying, come on, guys.
I
This is
thought
what
of
I'm
the
like.
prodigal son also. We do
Yeah.
wander away, but God calls us back and accepts our return to joy.
That's beautiful, yeah. We don't even recognize
This, we don't even recognize that he's there, walking with us and carrying
teaching us.
and
Right.
pushing and nudging and shoving and chastising from time to time. Hit up the side of the head.
Well, that's probably part of it too, that, it's not just the gentleness, but the hit upside the head
I
sometimes.
don't think that God's grace comes very often in other places. We've seen it in the last couple of weeks. That we come back to God more during this time.
Oh, you mean the country and the
Well,
world?
but that's another subject, but I think as I look back on my life, God has been most active in times of adversity. Or that at least I realized afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards.
And sometimes during, it
Yeah.
depends, it depends.
When I was doing my CPE training, one of my supervisors told us that his opinion was that you couldn't grow unless you were suffering. You had to suffer to grow. Now, I hope that's not true. I hope we can grow without suffering. But then, if that's the case, Bethlehem should be really growing, right?
I have to share something, can I share something with you? A letter from Australia yesterday. Some of you know my friend in Australia. And it's taken him all this time to write this letter of condolence to us. And he said, I reckon there was not a dry eye in my country when this happened in your country.
That's beautiful. I'm glad you had that story about Italy too. Wasn't that you that?
Yes, it was me. My nephew was
That's
in
right.
Italy when all of this happened. And on the Friday, they were in a square in Florence, and at noon, about 3 minutes of silence, he said, even the businessmen came out of their offices and stood in the street to share that 3 minutes of silence.
And now they're burning effigies of our president, so.
Not in Australia.
Not in Australia, and not in Italy.
They're burning effigies of Tony Blair probably in England, but they've always done that.
So, what does this say to us about, this passage say to us about how God might be related to Bethlehem? if you could think, I wasn't at Bethlehem in the really, really painful times. But were you aware of God working with you and loving you and holding you and nurturing you at that time? Or did you sometimes feel, well, you shared a little bit that sometimes you wondered where God was in that?
There's times, I think you go back and forth.
Yeah.
How's all you going?
Just like us, he's always there. We stray.
We struggle,
We leave when we don't want, we don't feel we need him and come back. But he is always there.
And our patient, or my patience, I shouldn't speak, but my patience, you know, I think that we want to be patient, and God's time is not my time.
I just don't understand that, Margie. I never did English. No, I sure do understand. Yeah.
I have the translation from the King James, and one thing that was a little bit different that I noted that was another image that was meaningful to me was instead of that lifting the infants to their cheeks, it says taking off the yoke on their jaws. And it was so powerful to me that that's such a burden, this, you know, yoke on your jaws. And to have that taken away, what a tremendous release that would be. And in my own experience, it's a little bit about being so shy that I couldn't talk. And this freedom to express myself and in ways that are continue to be unusual, but God can help you see blessing in your unusualness.
But your voice is important. I mean, that's why you are unusual. I'm not sure what you mean, because I don't know you that well. But
Yeah.
if in fact your voice is an unusual voice, I mean, obviously God put it in the community to be there for a reason. I can really identify with that image because my chiropractor once in a while puts me in this thing. It's to stretch my spine, but it is so painful, and it goes around my jaw. And I have to stay there for. He usually tells me like a long. This is Don Hill, so he always has a story to tell me while I'm hanging there. You know, because he tries to keep me distracted from the pain, and I have to be there for 2 minutes or something like that, and it's so painful. But then when he takes it off, it's like, oh, thank God, you know. So I can really identify with your image there.
Getting back to that, how I think when I look back on it again, that's perhaps a wake-up call for us. I mean, I'm not sure that everything, as you said before, you spoke with 3 pastors, I'm not sure that everything was so perfect before that we had any more participation at a group setting like this than we do today. Okay? And I think that sometimes, and I'll say it again, God acts in harsh ways. Perhaps it was a reason for my
To kind of
Remember
pull you
when
up.
Auntie was here, we had congregational meetings. We
Yes.
had to get on the phone to get people to come to
You
have
get
a
a
forum.
quorum, yes. So,
Saw it, and that was.
And I don't know
years
that
ago.
that's, I mean, against Bethlehem. I mean, that might be just churches, but we have to decide what we're going to do with that in the future.
yeah. And so I think now we need to look at that. We need to try to get over some healing that was not just for 3 years, but for a whole lot longer than that.
We were up the doctor.
You know,
Well, that's why I talked to some other pastors, not to hear gossip or anything like that, but to find out what Bethlehem's history was and what we're working with here, so we can be honest about it with each other and say how much of the problem was attributable to Mark Cole and his lack of people skills or his level of illness or whatever it was. I don't know because I wasn't here, but how much is the other side of the story?
there's
What
no
Bethlehem
question
can
but
do.
what we went downhill.
Yeah.
A lot.
But were you ready for that? You know.
And we, yeah, right, exactly. Were we ready to handle it? Can we look at ourselves and say, I'm partly to blame for this?
And how did Bethlehem respond to or react to or whatever to our
Passive
call?
aggressive. I think a lot of it was.
Until somebody pushed and nudged.
Well, toward the end, yeah.
Well, you know, there's no question that the whole situation was badly managed from the synod level, and they know that, and you had to become aggressive, and, well, assertive.
Well,
You had to
sure,
become
sure.
very assertive,
Yes.
you know.
Exactly.
And, but the synod did come through in the end, you know, so.
God reveals himself in many ways, and this is just one way maybe he revealed himself to us.
Well, maybe, I don't know that, it's, you know, it's not this punishing God, I'm not sure God did that, but I think maybe God let it
Well,
be
yeah.
used, let it happen.
I
and
didn't
that
mean that God was
made
causing the
it happen,
problem.
right,
No.
yeah, he wasn't causative, but maybe,
But
and
let
maybe
it
what
happen.
God is doing now is letting, I've heard several people articulate this thought, that maybe we were sort of resting on our laurels, and our laurels were what we thought they were, and so we got caught, and now God is letting us realize that, and now we can work with something, you know, and this is what I'm saying. Do you want to work with it, you know? Or do you want to go rolling along as Bethlehem has for over 100 years before? You know, and that's okay too. That wasn't bad, what that was. That wasn't bad. So that's what we have to decide. I think this image of the nurturing God, both in our lives, personally, for me or, you know, you, and for the whole of our community, our family of faith, can be very, very helpful in the years to come when it does get hard, when we have to address things with each other and look within at ourselves and really, you know, it's been helpful to me. There have been many times when I have said, God, you know, what's this about? Was this a waste of time, really? And then I just remember that if in fact God sent me here, and I believe that God did, you know, I really believe that, or I wouldn't be here, that this is going to work. We are going to build something wonderful together. One of the pastors at a workshop I recently attended he has a mega church, but he wasn't talking about necessarily building mega churches, but great churches that really are places where the kingdom is real, said, what you have to do is get all the members of your congregation that everybody donates at least 10 hours a week. Now, I think that's excessive, quite frankly. I don't think we need to grow that fast, because he also said that pastors need to be working at least 60 to 80 hours a week, and that we know is downright unhealthy. That's what I've been doing, but I don't intend to continue doing that after we get stabilized.
I could go 10 hours a week.
But you're retired.
I know, but I could.
You do more than
I could
that.
give 10 hours.
You could cut down to
But Ray
10
couldn't.
No problem.
No, but Ray couldn't, and we don't want to have a church of only retired.
Since that attack, yes, now I can.
Well, yeah, but normally when you're
No,
working, you don't have
business
any
has been
equipment.
so slow.
Most
now.
people have full-time jobs. I couldn't, aside from my job, go to a church, another church, and work 10 hours a week. Nor do I think we all should. I think that's a recipe for us to all be exhausted. But what I think he was trying to say, really, that was sort of how he described the recipe, you know, if you will. But I think what he was trying to say is we all have to be willing to make a commitment and put something into it, you know.
We did have to be.
You can't have a few dragging the others along. Or the few get exhausted, as is happening in Bethlehem.
I wonder if we really realize that what our spiritual gifts are.
Well, that's what we have to get
I
back to.
think that we really need to get into that, because this is what exhausts people. I think we're in things sometimes maybe we shouldn't be in. We'd be better off to be using our energies somewhere else.
Well, the one thing that I do want to add in the next year, in the next months, is pretty intensive chance for people to study scripture together, to go through the Bible. You did the Bible series several years ago, and this would be different. And I'm looking at a couple of formats that are available. But I'm saying Advent, but it's more likely probably going to be the first of the year, just because there's so much difference between now and the end of the year with Christmas and everything. But I want to make that available, and if only a few people join, only a few people join. But it would be wonderful if, you know, a whole bunch of the people in the church could join, and we could meet together once a week and go through the Bible that way. Really glean from that both growth in our spirituality, and also just be asking the question, what are we learning from this about us as a community, and where we want to be going in the future. So that's one thing that I do intend to add. You know, we have been doing some scripture in Sunday school, in the adult Sunday school, and that sort of thing. and I always try to preach on the scriptures. But you know, there's not many people who come to pray on Wednesday evenings. And then that's not saying people aren't praying at home. I mean, we need to be spiritual at home too, so that's okay.
Actually, 10 hours a week, you know, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, should be out of our spiritual, you know, it's all important wherever we are.
And it's not just the active out there ministry, you know, like for Stephen ministers or whatever. It might be at home. It might be with your children. It might, you know, there's different ways to be spiritual. But I think in order to be growing spiritual, we need to be doing some reading, both scripture and other stuff, and we need to be talking together and exploring spiritual aspects together, because that's how we grow. You know, I'd like for Annette to be able to lead us in some of the sort of philosophy of theology and spirituality. There's lots of, we have opportunities at Bethlehem. We have people. We just have to, again, we're all so tired and so drawn out. But I'm going to go, you know, very slowly about adding just a few components in the next while. But you're right, we need to see this as God's church, as the church of Jesus Christ on our social.
We need to strengthen. We've lost our food. And, you know, I'm sorry, but that sermon on Sunday morning just isn't working out. You know, you're trying, but, you know,
I agree.
20 minutes a week.
Well, and it's only me.
Yeah.
It's only me, you know.
You're on tomorrow morning,
Pardon?
9:20. Margaret's on tomorrow morning, 9:20.
No, that isn't what I said. I just said it's...
These are the things we wrote at the last workshop about what we used to be and what we are and where we want to go and what we want to retain. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but it was pretty good, I thought. We did a lot of work.
You want them all, but
Who did I miss?
Annette.
I'm sorry, okay.
Thanks.
Let's just take a few minutes with this before lunch, and then we might want to think about it and talk about it over lunch. We used to be mostly finished, welcoming, giving and cooperative, growing and glowing, building together. We had fellowship and caring, welcoming, trusting, willing workers, prayerful, anxious, confused, frightened, angry, defeated, divided, closed off. Sounds like most families, doesn't it? You know, a good mix. Disappointed, critical, stuck, one foot on a piece of gum, somebody said. Always hopeful, always faithful, and I'm not sure what misjudged by others meant. Was that about the whole thing, the last word? Probably. Today we are in process, grieving. I put that in capital. I put the things in capitals that people really said and more with emphasis, you know. Recovering, somewhat fragmented, on track, welcoming, caring, older, wiser, hopefully. Beginning to remember why we are here, cautious, afraid, looking at the shepherd, afraid to let go of the past, searching for an identity, renewed commitment, tired, weary, decimated but not devastated, a community of believers, inheritors of the finished tradition, angry, frustrated, untrusting, especially of leadership relationships, impatient at a crossroads, willing, loving, supportive, a faith family, prayerful, lots of power struggles, everything necessary for greatness, but we have much weeding to do. We want to become a change agent church, open, full of light, a beacon, church on the hilltop, more giving, benevolence, time, talent, known as a godly congregation, evangelical, seeker-oriented, balanced, challenging and nurturing, sandpaper and blanket, stronger internal programs, music, etc., courageous, serving common needs, unconditionally loving, praise-oriented, accepting, especially to those doing things such as leadership, more focused, discipleship, scripturally, prayerfully literate and based, more Bible study, active with the LCA and other churches, trusting others in God, knowing ourselves, secure in our identities. That's what I was talking about this morning, figuring out what that means, and energetic. We want to retain humbly friendly, inviting, hospitable, aware of our heritage, Lutheran, Christian, and Finnish, etc. playfulness, worshipful, scripture and sacrament, committed to growth, love and respect for each other, open to our church being used by the community. I think that was about, you know, like 12-step groups and that sort of thing. And great music blended with modern, willingness to look forward, relationships with the big church outside Bethlehem. So that's a pretty good list, isn't it? I was pretty impressed with us when I watched the film again to see all that we had to come up with. So what I would like to do now is break for lunch for half an hour, come back here about half. But as we're having our lunch, you can either eat your lunch here or come over. I'm going to go and buy a sandwich and a pickle and come back, and we can talk about this over lunch. Or you can talk, if you want to go for a walk, that's okay too. But this is the time for talking about this stuff. And I put some questions there. You might have other questions you want to ask yourself or ask the group too.
Complaining, you know.
Right. Well, they didn't come, so maybe that's why.
But
You
even
can
though,
only go with who we've got though.
no, but even though with only the people you got, like this, a small group, you still get a big enough representation to get most of everything encompassed.
If you just look at this group, I mean, it's a very varied group, isn't it? You know, we've got all different perspectives and interests and experiences, even just in this small group here in the last group.
Yeah, we all probably want to go in a little different direction, and we might agree or disagree with the way we're going.
But the thing is, Ray, if people don't decide to be part of the process, then they can't complain at the direction that the people take who do jump on board the process.
Well, they can't complain, but I can care less.
Right, exactly. You don't have to lose
No.
sleep over their
Right,
own things
right.
because they decided not to be part of it.
Right.
But I mean, like even our spouses who aren't here, except for you guys who are both here, I mean, I'm presuming that they are trusting that we give the input for our family, you know, and whatever. So if you could think of it, for those of us who are married people, there's twice as many people involved here. Because I know that if there was something that I thought Cliff really would like to bring forward when I go to a workshop, or if he was there and I wasn't, we would say, well, you know, this is what my husband thinks, or whatever. But I just, you know, I really feel that we can only go with people that take part.
Yeah. Now, maybe I shouldn't be speaking for my wife, but, well, anyways.
Well, if she wanted to speak for herself, she could come, right?
Well, that's true, but the thing is, she's been a member there, well, now,
All her life?
she's 42 years old all her life, and her dad, so, you know, there's members over 50 years old. And I'm just there 20, you know, from our marriage, which is still quite a long time. She does not feel comfortable even coming anymore. It's changed that much that she won't, you know.
But why doesn't she come and speak about that then?
She'd rather just go to another church right now because of all the things Bethlehem has gone through. To her, you know, and to me too, Sundays should be very restful, like this, you know, like a place like this, where you can relax, just take a deep breath and enjoy the service, enjoy it. But when it becomes more aggravating to go than to stay away, there's something wrong, and so their choice is to look for another place or stay away.
What I'm hearing with you is something of that my feeling too, that right now, we need a lot of comfort. And while it would be real hard for you and or any new pastor to just keep consoling and comforting, that's where we are. And so any kind of challenge has got to be pretty soft, pretty couched.
Right, like what Wayne was saying, it's very different from a man and a woman too. Me, I can,
You're still coming, and you're saying, you know,
I don't really care. And even with Marco, he never did anything to me, good or bad. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'd be able to go out. Or like a death. my mom and dad died, you know, it's not hard on me. If one of her parents died, it will be just extremely hard. She'd be a basket case. I mean, it's just the way she is compared to the way I am. I take everything, no matter what it is, very lightly. You know, I move on. Okay, that's done. Move on. You know, I don't need. For me, I don't even need a day of grieving.
Did you do Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, along.
So you're
I think with
Sure.
with Pastor Lepisto, I think we had to do that as part.
Remember if you're a T or
I
not?
can't.
Because my guess is T, you know.
Yeah, I
so
don't
you
know.
Take it on a more rational
Right.
outlook than.
Very logical, and then you just move on.
Yeah.
And but with her, like if a parent died, she wouldn't be the same for a long time.
Right, and that's kind of what happened in the church.
Right.
With his death
Right.
of a real comfortable.
And that's right. She does
feeling.
not feel even comfortable coming because of the
It took me a
friends and
while.
people who
Right.
have.
Then through all that, it reminds you of it.
So it's not even what we're doing now.
No.
It's
It's
the
just,
reminder.
she just maybe wants to start new somewhere else, you know, and that's so it's got nothing to do with what you know.
But you know what happens sometimes when you have a very beloved pastor? When that pastor leaves, people will leave sometimes in droves, even though the new pastor might be a good pastor, and it's because it's very hard for them to just see any other pastor in the pulpit, you know, where that other pastor was.
I
And
think
then,
yeah, this
like
stuff.
another reminder.
That's why whenever there's a new pastor, whenever there's a change, there's always people who leave because it's easier for those people to get used to new in a new environment
Right.
than it is to get used to new in the old environment.
Like I know she was very fond of Pastor Lepisto, you know.
Who was?
I'm just talking about my wife.
Oh, yeah.
And but ever with driver Bishop, Mark Cole, you know, this is you can go on and on. I think that's where the break sort of started.
But one of the problems is you've had such short times for pastors, but you never get time to get used to that pastor to come to the level of
Right.
as the pastor left stone.
right.
Right. And there's been some, you know, and nothing against the pastors. For our family, there's been some very negative things with each new one. And now for driver Bishop, it was my son, no confirmation class. Where
We didn't have confirmation.
no, there was a couple of years there was no confirmation class. And
Couple of workshops, but
Yeah.
not
It was a
ongoing.
workshop, yeah.
but he,
I
you
don't
know,
think you could have an ELC.
well,
person.
well, he fell in the cracks there, you know. And
It
but
just
yeah,
hadn't
he,
been picked up yet.
right. And so I mean, there's different reasons for different, and that's just the way, you know.
But chances are, if he had stayed, 11 years as what Pastor Levisto was here, by that time you would have got very fond of him too. He had to leave for
Right.
whatever reasons, but then Marco wasn't here very long either.
Right.
So that's one reason I would like to stay with Bethlehem for a while, because Bethlehem needs to be able to have that
Continuity.
long time of continuity and peacefulness and gradually. At the first, when you have a new pastor, we're getting used to each other, but we'll work it out. We'll work out a relationship, and that'll go on. And then, but the problem is when you stay too long, then people have a hard time getting used to a new pastor after that. So you have to find a nice median time. But that's been hard for Bethlehem. But there is a principle in psychology called the familiarity principle. And what it says is, whatever is familiar to me is what I like generally. Because, it's like whether it's my family of origin or if I've been married a long time or my kids or my church or whatever. That's what I like. When any change comes, you go through a time, even if it's a good change, like if you have a miserable marriage and you need to have a divorce, once you leave the marriage, even though it's a good change, it's still going to be really, really hard for a while because it's unfamiliar. And you have to stay with the change long enough that becomes the norm and the familiar. And then it's like, oh, now this is comfortable and I'll have a hard time changing to something else or even going back to the old. So, for example, if you have a family where everybody is really sarcastic and picking at each other all the time, and you work with them in therapy and you help them to start speaking different ways and being more respectful, they will, for a long time, not do it. They'll do it a little bit, then they'll stop, and then they'll do it a little bit and stop, because it's hard for them to retain, even though they know it's better. And it actually feels nice when it happens, but it feels not right or not normal, it feels like it's contrived or whatever. Until they get used to it being the normal way of behaving. And then, of course, they never want to go back to the other. And the couples or the families that make it in therapy are the ones that can get over that time. And it's the same with churches. You know, if you stay with the same church with the new pastor and you stay there till he or she becomes familiar, till you really get to, you do stuff like this, bashing each other out and working through stuff, you know, or not each other, but issues, you know, all together, and you get to gradually, you become friends with each other, you become family together, and then that's so familiar that you think, oh, why did I feel uncomfortable when he or she was new? But you have to get over that hump, and that's why there are some people who do not have very much, whatever it is, I don't know what it is, it's just they don't have that hang with it, you know, patience built in.
Tenacity.
Tenacity, maybe, yeah. But it is a running away from the pain thing, you know, and some people do. I mean, there's people who, whenever they get into pain, will run away with alcohol. There's other people who will run away to, you know, whenever they go, like, they have serial monogamous relationships, because as soon as one relationship gets out of, you know, you move past the dating point to where you get into some of the hard stuff, and then you run away because it gets painful, rather than work through that stuff. And you know, in a long marriage, it's so nice, it's so romantic to be married a long time, isn't it? Because,
Some days.
well, you guys are still practically honeymooners, but
20 years.
well,
I'll wait till it's 40.
yeah, you know. I mean, I think after 25, maybe, it really starts to get quite different. You know, you get that. You've been married a long time. I'm not trying to be that.
No,
you should be proud of that. But there's something very neat about, even after your kids are grown up and there's just the two of you, and you're in that. You have stuff still. You know, sometimes you have illnesses, and sometimes you get like dealing with retirement and what do we do with the rest of our life and all that stuff. So there's still issues that come up. But you've got a pattern for dealing with that stuff, that you understand each other so intimately, and you've got a deep level of trust. And that's what you have to work with in a church. Whenever you get a change, and you can run into a new relationship. But, you know, wherever you go, you're going to have to stay long enough to sustain it.
Well, one thing that came out of this most recent exchange here is realizing it's not just the recent history of the Metzler-Cole, but prior to that we had interims and short-term kinds of pastors, that we've had kind of a long time of kind of floundering around and trying to, you know, make it work as best we could.
And you've been trying, always.
So I think that part of that might be, and this is just a new idea that just came to me, that we're kind of used to sort of running the ship and keeping it going, a lot of us, and it's hard for us to adjust to new leadership that has ideas and so forth, that there's this trust stuff, and then there's also that, yeah, we kind of can do it. Trust us.
Get out of the way and let us do it.
Trust
So
us.
do you want a leader or do you want a follower? Maybe
How
that's what
about
I want.
something in between?
Well, I would like to collaborate.
Right.
The church has not come to the point of collaboration. The church is still fighting to lead. And you know, there's no point in having a pastor here if you don't want a pastor to be a pastor. Unless you want a follower, which is, if you tell me that,
I
then
don't
that's
think that way.
good.
I think that it's getting used to the styles and maybe making some adjustments.
Oh yeah, I don't mean now, Annette. I mean for the long run. Now we're just working stuff out. But if Bethlehem wants a pastor who's a follower, there are pastors who are followers, and I can do that, you know. That would be a way lot easier, energy-wise, and, you know, that would be far better for me with my health.
Well, and I think it might be a message of back off a little. You don't have to stop leading, but you could back off some and see if the council and your other leaders of committees and things like that will collaborate and will.
Well, they're not. I think we lost that ability. You know, when folks left, he had us trained to do that, and that followed through with Pastor Lepister. But for the last 10 years, since Pastor Lavistow moved along, I think we've lost that ability.
Because of the lack of trust.
Right, yeah.
The ability
To pick up on with it, you know,
To collaborate.
to collaborate with each other and to keep things going well.
Keeping things going is different from keeping things going well.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no question that, you know, I've told the synod, given what Bethlehem has been through, not just with Pastor Cole, but over about 10 years, you said, with many pastors, Bethlehem is in tremendous condition. You know, I mean, what they told me what they told me to expect coming in here was not what I found at all, and I'm really pleased about that. Because that would have been very, very hard work.
What did they tell you about the fair?
There.
How about you go?
But also lots of talent. There's lots of talent. There's lots of talent. Plus, as you say, way back, there was really good training. But Bethlehem also has to recognize that, yes, I can back off and be patient, but you still have to listen. When I see something, you have to give it some credibility. Now, you may say, it's going to take us a while to get used to this and make these changes or whatever, but you can't just say no. I mean, you can. I mean, but if you want a leader, you can't just say no. We're not going to hear what you have to say because we don't like it. We've never done it that way before, and we don't want it because if I'm, you know, it's really helpful. That's the advantage of a therapist with a family or a marriage. It's like new eyes coming into the situation. I can come in and I can see the trees for the forest. And as I said earlier, it's something for you, Ray, that, you know, that's because you're so used to it. You know, you don't notice it when it happens, but a new person coming in and sitting there, it's like, wow, you know, it's easy to see because it's not the functioning that you would expect. It's a pattern that's Bethlehem's pattern. Now, Bethlehem has some really, really good patterns that are pretty unique too. Now, the welcoming aspect of Bethlehem is probably, of all the churches I've ever known, it's probably one of two that's the most welcoming churches that I've ever seen.
It's upheld in the synod as being.
A very welcoming church.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, the synod loves Bethlehem, but they also know the problems, you know, because they've heard them from a long line of pastors. And I think that's one reason why when you guys went to the synod the first time, they didn't hear you, because they had heard stuff from pastors before Pastor Cole. And when you first went to the synod, was it the other bishop?
Charlie knew a couple people up there.
It's a different staff. No, but
Really, then?
yeah, that might not. It may not be. But when you first went, was it the old bishop?
No.
Oh, it was scary already. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking it might have
We
been
really
the old.
thought that he knew us rather than told.
Well, I think he heard us. I know he heard us. But then they sent in a consultation
consulting,
team
yeah.
who
Well,
came
I
back
thought-
with a verdict that they didn't want either. They didn't want it. What can you do? These people are elected to that office. And so they did the best they could.
But I've seen the
They got
consultancy
there.
report, and it wasn't even professionally written. I mean, it was not well done.
And then on that
I've
consultation,
written
there
many
was
consultancy
there was
reports.
a member who had worked for LSSI for years.
What LSSI is a big group, Mark.
But I don't think
There is still a loyalty.
Connection, yeah.
As far as collaboration though, I think that from a personal standpoint, as working with these pastors on staff over the years, I felt a real colleagueship with Pastor Levistow and with Bob Driver Bishop. I could go to both of those people and say, how about this? And they'd say, go for it. And, you know, I didn't work with Pastor Cole that long, just about 3 months, but I had the feeling that
You were on staff.
well, that's what I'm talking about. So I said, on staff, I felt a real collaboration with both Levistow and Bob Driver Bishop. Bob Driver Bishop was there when we started our teleministry. Nedra and Kathleen and I, he just said, you know, go, do it. This is good. He encouraged us to go to see the ministry training. I don't think it's been that long that we have been, you know, back from
Not collaborative.
not collaborating.
Yeah.
What happened to the telephone ministry?
Well, like everything else, when Cole was there was no encouragement, And it got to be where people who were telephoning people were afraid to do that because of what they might hear and how do they respond.
And you couldn't go, if you heard something, you couldn't go to the people and talk about it.
Right.
No recourse, let's say.
Yeah. And,
Because that's a really important ministry.
well, it was.
And that's the same thing with the committees, that if they were struck down and they were harassed and so forth, there's probably still some retention of that feeling as well.
Oh, yeah.
We get it going and the judge will shoot it down or something.
It's a lack of trust is what it is. Yeah, and lack of trust is always based in fear. You know, I can't step out and talk to this person or this other committee or the council or whatever. And so I'll just bring it in and try to supersede them or whatever, you know, to get my point across. There's no sense of collaboration. What I want to see is the council and the committees collaborating with one another. And the council can, at that point, then trust the committees, that if the committees have something they need to bring to council, they'll bring it. They'll trust council to. Now, respecting something doesn't mean council will not talk about it or look at it. We're going to do a little exercise of this in an hour or so, but that it'll be done with great respect for what their position is. Because that's what collaboration is all about. It might be that you start from different positions, but you find something that you can all live with.
Oh, who turned it off?
I cut the wire.
You just can't resist, can you?
That's much better. It was cold at times.
Yeah, it's very uneven.
Yeah.
So I'd like you don't have to say it out loud if you don't want to, but I'd like you to really think about this last question here or sentence beginning. Today, my priority as a member of the Bethlehem family is. And you don't have to say that, but just be thinking about that. What am I going to be? I guess what I'm trying to encourage here is something proactive from everybody here, an attitude of proactivity. And I guess what I was thinking of priority, because we were looking at this transitions on the page here. My priority in being a member of what Bethlehem will be from now on or into the future, gradually processing. I'm always a process person. Where do I think I will stand in that? Maybe I'm just tired and I want to stand back. Or maybe I want to go out there and start asking people what they want. Or maybe I want to be pointing out to people our strengths, but also be saying that let's look at this. Or, maybe I don't want to do any of that. I mean, just for yourself, think of something and be open to, and maybe that's a question that you could leave open to God too. God, what do you want me to do or to be? Or to become as a member of the Bethlehem family. But the reason I just put the 3 little dots after that is because there's no right or wrong or finished answers to any of these 3 statements. You might read this list next month and think about different things or feel different things. But remember the difference between a thought and a feeling. If you say, I feel that this, or I feel that such and such, that's not a feeling, that's a thought. A feeling never has the word that after it, okay? We use the word feeling for thoughts in our language. But that really means I think that, or I judge that, or I believe that. But if you say, I feel, then it has to be something, and usually an emotion has something in your body. There's a bodily reaction to an emotion. And whether you know it or not, you have emotions. It's harder for a tea person, And sometimes in our society it's harder for men because you've been trained not to hook into your feelings. A lot of times when boys are young, they're taught, boys aren't. One man said to me, men think, women feel. That's what he'd been taught, which isn't right. But men and women think and men and women feel. So when you're trying to hook into your feelings, it's really important because our feelings do propel our actions and our behaviors. And the less we're aware of our feelings and our emotions, the more we are like passive aggressive or, not understand why I'm acting the way I am. You may think you do, but you're not really. So try to, all of us, be aware of, you know, if I'm saying what I think about here, those are the things that I think, when I read this, I think that, or I believe that, or I judge that. What a feeling is, when I read and think about this list, I may feel nothing. I may feel excited, I may feel overwhelmed, I may feel scared, I may feel hopeful, I may feel, what are some other feelings that people might have?
I don't think we'll be angry about this, but
You could feel angry.
about this.
Happy, yeah.
Frustrated.
Frustrated, guilty, confused, yeah. There's a lot of feelings, but none of them have that in it. And whenever you have a feeling, then stop for a minute and say, okay, so where is this placed in my body? You know, this feeling, it can be in your head, by the way. Feelings can be in your head, that's why we get headaches. Or you can get a feeling of euphoria, which kind of lifts you up from your head, too. So, feelings can be in your gut, they can be in your genitals, they can be, you know, not that kind of feelings, would you let me finish? In some societies, they believe that feelings of creativity resides in the genitals. You know, because if you think about it, our procreativity comes from our genitals. So there's all sorts of places that you know, that you have your feelings, and with your feelings comes your power. Your power isn't in your intellect. Your power is, aside from what we tend to think in our society, you know, the intellect can figure things out and get ideas, but you've got to have feelings. You've got to have passion behind those ideas for anything to come of them. So it's really good to be hooked into both the intellectual and the affective or the feeling side of things. So you can take this list and put it aside and have it to look at in the future, and when you're kind of reflecting about Bethlehem, it's a good list to take out. Some of it you may disagree with, because it came from a large group, as I said, you know, a bunch of different people. But some of it will help you. Will be meaningful to you, and you're very welcome to add anything that comes to your mind about this list. Because there could be something that would come up, you know, 6 months from now, and you'd say, "Oh my gosh, I never realized we were this." Although I've got a pretty good broad section. Any other thoughts or ideas that you want to say about this page before we move on? I think I want to have these out next. Yes, this is what I want to hand out next. I wanted to go with the theological worlds. Oh, actually, let's keep these for a moment. You have a page from the last workshop that had the theological world stuff on it, a little blurb of each of the theological worlds. So what I want to do next is ask each of you about your worlds. Now, I was saying in the card, some of you didn't hear it though, that something that's happened to me at the last workshop, if you remember, I said to you, I've kind of had a foot in worlds 2 to 5, but I've never had a foot in world 1. But I have lately, and I'm getting to understand world 1, because the experience that I have had in world 1 has been that lonely unconnectedness, that I have a vision. I have a vision for this part of the kingdom that is Bethlehem. But lots of times it feels like I'm separated from that vision because it's not real there. And I have to keep climbing up in that treehouse and cutting a hole in the ceiling to see the star, to see the, you know, sometimes I sit in the parking lot and I look up at our star and I think, why don't we put some lights on that, you know? I have felt that lonely unconnectedness, and what I have had to do is say, okay, how can I move from being pulled down into the quandary or the dilemma here, but rather being energized by that to move toward the bringing about of the kingdom, which is my vision at Bethlehem. So I have had now, this is a real blessing for me, because you know, this experience that I've been having over the last several months is a real blessing for me because it's given me more of a sensitivity into a theological world that I could understand intellectually before but couldn't really identify with. So what did you find about your theological worlds? And there's no right or wrong answers here, by the way. Everybody's experience is unique.
I found myself, and I didn't have enough time to fill out this chart, although I did all of this, but I didn't have enough time to complete my answers on here. But from the answers I did manage to get on in, I find that I'm in 3 and 5. I said 4.
You want to talk about that?
And I don't know yet.
Okay.
And it's in some fulfillment. I would agree with that. I would agree.
3, and many times for 3, it's people, especially in your childhood, who grew up not feeling noticed or not feeling like you were really solid in the world. Okay. Sometimes it's the opposite for the youngest. Sometimes the youngest is the little princess. You
But
know?
I didn't learn to talk until I came to Bethlehem, you see, to really express.
Oh,
until
there
I
you
came to
go.
Bethlehem. And they let me do it.
I'd like to know where everybody is.
Sure.
Is that okay?
That's okay with me if everybody.
If they want to.
If they feel comfortable, yeah.
I'm in World 4, but I'm very close in 5 and 3.
So you've got sort of one foot dangling over those other 2 worlds. Do you know what that's about, Margie?
No, I guess I misplaced. I don't know.
Misplaced? It sounds like you're at 3. What does misplaced mean to you?
No, I don't. Misplaced is not the right word.
Okay.
I think maybe a better choice would be sometimes I'm in one place and another thing. And then
Well,
another
that's pretty
place.
typical, yeah. It's very rare for somebody to be only in one world, but you know a few people who are firmly in one world or the other. Everybody knows a few people like that. But we generally, we move around depending on what life is doing with us at this time, you know. But we usually have one strong tendency, like you said, World 4 is a strong tendency for you. But I don't think it's inborn. I think it's more about our life experiences and often our family of origin. Do you feel like 4 is a misplacement for you, or does it feel like a right fit for you?
Donna?
It remains to be seen. Okay, it's all new.
And sometimes you get more understanding of who you are from others. You know, and to me, that what I know of you, that seems like a good place compared to the others. You know what I mean? If you just looking for what other people think of you. I thought it was real funny when I did it because I knew right away, just reading these things, where my husband was.
Well, didn't you talk about him at the last work?
I have, but I wasn't sure where I was. Kind of thought that I was at 1, and that was my second highest score. But I was in the same world with my husband, which I thought was really funny.
Which is?
Because I knew where he was in 3.
Yeah, I think we talked about that last time.
And I knew because of his need for piling up stuff, that just seemed real obvious. You know.
And that surprised you about yourself? Have you looked in your garage?
It's mostly his, not his stuff. It's mostly his stuff.
Part of it.
But I remember what you said. You said he also piles up sort of academic accolades.
Right,
and things.
right. But the B part of it, you know, makes good sense to me from understanding that I've been real interested in, you know, helping others find themselves, where my husband would look at that and say, well, what's that about? You know, I mean, he's an educator, so he's interested in helping them learn and that sort of thing. But find yourself sounds a little too, you know, mysterious and psychological. So but anyway,
that's a really strong phrase for me, helping people find themselves.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then at 1 was my second highest thing. The whole sort of not belonging kind of stuff that is part of the type A thing was a lot of my childhood. And then the sense in the B now is more the momentary glimpses through something very beautiful is another area that means a lot to me.
That's great. That's interesting what you said a little bit earlier when you were describing kind of your life growth, and you said, what did you say, now I have a voice, would you say it's unusual or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
No. But you don't have as much of that disconnectedness.
Right. And like you said, we go through stages as we mature. I'm sure if we're maturing in a healthy way, we're not as much type A as we used to be when we were.
But that statement, now, now I have the voice and it's unusual, but I have it, it's strong, is that for both of those two worlds of yours, especially your strongest world, that's like, I was invisible and now I have my voice,
The A and B, is that like a continuum, and you can go back and forth on that?
Yeah, so a lot of us go back and forth, but it's almost, has anybody here done the Enneagram? You don't know what that is? That's another sort of very ancient, religious, philosophical personality thing, developed by the Sufis. It's very popular in theological circles today, maybe on Sundays. And it works on a wheel, and you sort of you're on one place on the Enneagram, but the opposite of you is where you consider evolve.
Oh,
That's
well,
what we
that.
did, that's what we did
What did you
with
call
our
it?
Stephen ministry.
It was spirituality wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that was an Enneagram.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, and so you could say I'm a 2 or I'm an 8
Yeah.
or something
Well, we
like
just
that.
did
And you work toward what they call it is you work toward your redemption.
Oh.
And there's no question that in the theological worlds, although we do go back and forth, because don't we? Some days we're more childish than others are more.
Yeah.
Some days we're more secure than others.
That's right.
Sometimes I wake up insecure and I fall asleep secure, and sometimes I wake up in the morning feeling really strong, and by evening I say, I'm back in type A, But it is an evolutionary thing. But some people are very much, and this is why they think it's if you had lots of real good secure nurturing when you were a child, it enabled you to, your natural tendencies were there, but it enabled you to sort of come to a point of validating the type, becoming a type B person. I know I'm using World 3 language when I say validating, but I guess you know what my natural tendency is here. And again, this is one of the reasons we have to look at this is because if we're going to work toward healthy communication, we use different words than each other. We use different phrases. I mean, we know if you go back just to basic education stuff, educators know that there's some people who will use visual language. Oh, I see what you mean. Now I hear you. They're an audio learner, that type of thing, Well, we literally use different language for redemptive stuff. For Annette and me, probably redemption would be someone finding themselves and becoming the best person that Jesus would have them be. For a World 4 person, redemption is a whole completely different thing. I mean, the word justification leaves me cold. I understand World 4. I mean, I'm a theologian, but I don't own World 4 at all. I certainly believe in grace and justification, but to me, gracefulness in my life has come through finding myself and knowing that that's who Jesus believes in and validates and loves. But for a World 4 person, probably for Margie, it's a whole different experience. And can we talk together? I hope so, but this gives us more insight into each other's language. And so, Ray, when you say, I think everybody should be able to, have an opinion and say what they mean, and I say, yeah, I agree with you 100%, but it's how we use those opinions and the language we use and the way we present our opinions that can be very misunderstood or very more easily understood. That's what Annette's been saying to me too, So this is about learning to communicate with each other. And if you think about this as, let's say we're the microcosm of the church right now, just think about one little area liturgically. What does this mean for us in worship? What is this? It's very big, for us in worship. Nancy comes out of the service, 1 week we don't have the creed, and she says, Pastor, I really missed the creed today. 1 week we didn't have the creed, For other people, they say, do we have to say the creed every week? It's so long, What does this mean for us? worship-wise, when we understand this, it gives us a lot more patience with each other to say, well, this week kind of left me cold, but boy, I could see that it really turned Kathleen on, you know?
That's sort of what we did with our student ministry, to appreciate each other's look at how you connect with the holy.
Yeah, yeah, that's what this is about.
It's always the Athanasian Creed we use.
That's long.
And tedious. There's a lot of other words I could give you right now, but then I wouldn't want to use my language.
Once a year would be enough.
I actually, the first time I ever heard the Athanasian Creed, it really turned me on. You know, it's like, this is, but I wouldn't want to say it every week, you know? It's like, you know, this is like the story of faith on 2 pages, you know?
How long, 2 pages?
How long, or 4 pages, or whatever it is. Yeah, and again, the Athanasian Creed, most churches don't even have it in their books anymore, because we Lutherans do, you know? Now, what world was Luther in, predominantly? Four, absolutely. Luther was a World War person. Luther went to Scripture, and he was the first person in history that we know about, you know, that put it out to the world, that discovered grace, that discovered the story of World War. What an amazing gift he gave to the world. You know, we should be so proud to bear his name, even though he never wanted us to bear his name, because, you know, that's a World War thing too. World III person would have said, yeah, use my name, it's me. Here I am, I said.
Yeah, very good.
You're now all Lutherans. Now, a World I person probably would have said, look, see that star up there? Isn't it gorgeous? Doesn't it remind you of God? Let's call that star. You know?
You went back to Scripture for that pretty much, so he wanted it to be called a Christian.
Oh yeah, no,
You
but
are
that was,
Christian.
no, but that was,
But
I mean, that
don't
came
you
out
think
of
some
who
of
he was.
we people who are in World III, for example, who go back to Scripture, or are we forcing ourselves?
No, and I am not saying he was wrong at all. I think
No,
he
no,
was
I know. He
absolutely
was
right
right.
in
Yeah.
what he said.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we should be
And
called,
yet
we
he-
should be all called the Church of Christ.
Right.
That's what he
I just
wanted.
read that yesterday.
You know, he didn't want us to be called the Roman Church either, you know.
Because there was only one.
You know, he wanted us to be called the
Christian.
Universal Church of Christ, the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
if you will, you know. But I'm just joking when I say that. But that is a World War way of looking at it, you know. But, the rest of it was just joking. Even if he was in World War, I don't think he would have said name it after me, but or World III. But you know what I mean. But he is definitely World. Most of our theologians have been World IV, but the difference is Luther was a type B World IV. Luther brought in salvation and grace and forgiveness. Whereas type A World IVs get pulled down into the dilemma, which is the sinfulness and the original sin. It's type A
Some of
people,
both.
yeah, oh, absolutely. And well, there's always all types in a church. That's why we.
No, I mean,
understand.
Luther himself had some of.
Oh, well, he lived in type A until basically his salvation, if you will. You know, he almost died he almost had a complete breakdown
Flagging
because of
himself.
type A, yeah.
Flying.
No, he was taught to be type A, but I believe that whether it was God's
Eventually
grace that
came out.
brought him out of that, something brought him out of that. Maybe he had to find sanity somehow. Type A probably wasn't authentic to him, you know, to his, but again, that's World III language. But, you know, something in his heart couldn't live as a type A World IV person. And still today, many people live as type A. You know, when I was working in the hospital, I would have people call me all the time that their babies were sick and needed to be baptized really fast because otherwise they would be in sin, you know, living in sin. And when I worked with the baptism group that are having their babies baptized, we met last week, and you know, I said to them, we believe in original sin, but we don't believe that your babies are sinful, and if they die between now and 2 weeks from now when they're baptized, that they're going to be unloved by Jesus. That's not what original sin is about for us Lutherans. But before that, for Luther, it was before he discovered what grace was about, you know.
I think it was pretty much with Lutherans for a long time.
Well, I think there are still Lutheran groups that do.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
there are definitely type A whole Lutheran, the word we use is synods, but denominations, if you will. But I think the ELCA is a type B Lutheran city.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I belong to the ELCA. Because I believe in that theologically and from Scripture, I believe that. But we have to also remember that the canon was chosen probably it was chosen by males, and there's a lot more men in World 4 than there are women. And naturally, sort of, women are put there, we're taught that. We've been trained in that, but they were also trained in that world. That was the first sort of theological world that evolved. And so the books that would have presented the other worlds probably were thrown out and never got into the canon. So we have to...
That's the goddess.
It's the goddess thing. Anybody here read The Chalice and the Blade? That book has the best chapter that I know of, or maybe it's a couple of chapters, but section that I know of, that talks about, it's a history of faith through the ages, and specifically in Christianity as it came into the world. But it goes back prehistory times too. And the Chalice and the Blade, and it actually has a study book that goes with it. The chalice being the feminine and the blade being the masculine. But they have a very good section in there. I'm trying to think of the author's name, but I can't. It might come to me. She has a very good section about when the canon was chosen and how certain books were chosen and for what reasons. At least from her theory, and I think it's probably pretty well researched and pretty good. She's an anthropologist, a religious anthropologist. It's not a new book. It's several years old, but it's still very good. I actually have it as something. No, actually, I loaned it to one of our confirmation kids. He wanted to know about this stuff, so I loaned it to him. So if anybody wants it, I'll get it back.
Okay, what other groups are we in?
Yeah.
I'm 3. My top one is 3, and with a 4 coming in second. And as you were just talking, I'm thinking my Missouri Synod upbringing was probably type A, but I'm thankful I'm type B 4. But 3 was the stronger.
So you're like Luther; it didn't sit right on you.
Yeah,
type of
right,
stuff.
right. But I'm stronger in 3.
I am 2, and 1 was next. However, the others are evened out. I think I'm all of them.
Well,
I think we bounce back and
we
forth.
do.
I can't get enough excited about one.
Yeah.
Especially if you have like 80 in one and 20 in another.
Yeah.
You see,
That's different,
you have a real
yeah.
strong.
But when you get
But you really
half of that, it seems to me that you must. That is, if you understand what you're doing in the beginning, and I don't always understand.
Well, you will. You'll understand it more as we go through time and work with this in the
Okay.
church. I think that for me,
I understand the types.
Yeah, I've been trying, I don't know. I think,
Did you do it?
Did
Did you take all those
Did you use the tool?
questions and add them up?
no, I just got that today.
Was
I
that
think
not
I-
in your handouts when you got?
Well, I got the tape that I realized these were there. Until he said there.
Okay, well, you can do it another time.
But just, looking at the tape and reading them, I can see a little,
Different ones.
Yeah, just.
Sure.
What am I?
I would guess that you have some of 3 and 4 in you. I would guess. But I don't know you that well, so
Yeah.
I could be way off.
I think
I'm
there's,
guessing.
depending if you're my family or someone I care about, and then the others, like I say, I work with, that I intentionally push buttons to get them, antagonized. Oh, yeah. But, that's what I'm just saying, so it really depends. So it's a little bit of each world. I mean, we've got, well, sometimes. But we've got a lot of, lazy people that want to get paid to do nothing. And
So you kind of push them.
I just, I'm a person that speaks my mind. I'll go up to them and say it, you gonna do something today,
Some justice issues
Yeah.
that fits in world too. But I encourage you to go ahead and take it because sometimes you can get a surprise.
Yeah.
And then you read more of the details and you see, oh, yeah.
Well,
And read that handout too, that explains it all. Wayne, what did you find?
I didn't do it.
Can we listen?
I guess I'm not really into a lot of this, but I didn't very get time to watch tapes. What did you say I was in
On the
3?
tapes, I think some of it was missing. Maybe the camera went off or something. We didn't have, maybe
No, I-
Lauren got involved in whatever.
You
she said.
picked up almost
Did it?
everything.
Oh, maybe the tape I got then was at default, because I listened to one of the tapes that started at World 3. It left at 1 and 2.
No, I don't believe so.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. So you got it all. Good. Well, I do encourage you, both to take it, because I think that it is going to be a tool we're going to use in the future, and it can be very, very helpful for understanding ourselves, but also for how we relate to others. You know, once I learned a lot, I have lots of these tools, of course, that I've been exposed to over the years and forced to take in my courses often, but every time I've done it, I said, oh, another one of these. But, you know, it's given me more insights of, oh, wow, I do that, you know, or that's me. You know, like one of the tools taught me that it was about how you join. And that I'll sit around on the outside edges of a group and wait till they invite me in rather than go into a group and join. And I like to be able to pick and choose which groups I'm even going to sit around on the outside of, you know. So that says a lot for Bethlehem, by the way.
And what are you in?
Oh, that's not in there. Oh, well, I've been in all of them, but I think 3 is my natural world. That's certainly, I was the invisible child in my family, so that makes sense. And then I have quite a bit of 2 and 5. 4 and 1 are my least. But right now, as I say, I've really been identifying with 1 lately, which is not a bad experience. And when I realized, oh, this is world 1, it was very helpful to me, you know? Very helpful, because then I could figure out a coping strategy for what I was experiencing. Don, how about you?
I had guessed I was going to be 3 and 1, but I was 3 and 4.
Were you? Okay, so what, do you know what that's about? Do you know what that, no?
Why?
Yeah, do you know why? Do you know what that's about in your life? Or what does that mean? To discover that, what did that mean to you?
Well, I just assumed really I was going to be in 3. As I read the descriptions of the worlds, I kind of felt like I fell into world 3. Yes, I felt like you did as a child, an invisible child.
Maybe 4 is more, you come more that way as an adult or something, you know? I think that in order to be a type B world 4 person, if you're world 3 and you're a type A, you have to move into B before you could move into. If you move down to 4, you would be a type A. You know, you'd get into the guilt. You're the invisible person, the not validated person, you know. So in order to get into being a type B sort of person who experiences their salvation and the grace of world 4, you really would have to be a type B world 3 if you're a world 3 person. So if you have 3 and 4, I hope you're a type B world 3. Now the difference is, do you get pulled down into the dilemma, or does the dilemma actually give you power to move on? And that's what I was talking about first thing this morning, is Bethlehem going to get pulled down into the vortex at this point? Or is Bethlehem going to say, we've been through tremendous pain, but we're going to use that to give us energy to become more involved, which may be bigger, but not necessarily. It's more like to well, you know, we're using world 3 language to become our best selves, you know. I guess for world 4 language would be to really experience being a community of grace, you know. I have a little exercise that I want to hand out. Now,
Margaret.
Margaret,
Oh,
I
I
know
know.
that I was between a 3 and a 5. But when I said that I maybe felt invisible as a child, I never doubted that I was loved. Never, ever. I was loved by all my family. It's just that, Margaret, you're too young to understand this.
You were young, but you really weren't validated as having a voice in the opinion.
Yeah. Or do a little ballet tour for us, Margaret. Very, very good, you know.
I think that for some of the folks that aren't INFPs and that aren't really into psychology, we need to do some work with this in terms of what the practical applications
Right, that's
are.
what we're going to
That
do
would
now.
be real
Yeah.
helpful to, I mean, you know, I could stay in theory forever if I'd be comfortable, but I know people that need.
That's why we're moving on to a practical application at this point. But Margaret, you've never done that in Girl Scouts.
In fact, I did a ballet leap one time and broke my toe. That was at the instigation of my sister.
But you know what that's about? That's about being loved for, you know, sort of what you can do, or for being the little sister, but not being loved for Margaret and who Margaret really was inside that little body.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that if Bethlehem is in World 3, and if we feel invisible, I hope we realize that we're loved. You know, I hope we have this sense, this overwhelming sense of being loved.
I think Bethlehem varies. I mean, all of us were different. That's why.
No, as a church, I mean.
Oh, as a church.
You know, as a congregation, I hope we have this, this collective, we know, there's the hub, we're inside the hub.
You know when you would walk down the hall during the difficult time and you told me that you would walk around and you'd say, maybe the lampstand has been moved. What did you pray at that time?
Oh, well, I told you I would walk around the church, both inside and outside, saying, you cannot have us. We have been bought with the blood of Christ. These people do not belong to you.
That was really good. That was
And I
really
would
good
walk
word
around,
of
and I
theology.
would walk around saying that.
So what you did is you had a World 3 experience of maybe the lampstand has been removed.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
God doesn't know we're here anymore. And then you would invoke World 4, which you knew had power for you. You see? What worlds did you say you're in?
3 and 5. So far.
Well,
since I went.
4 stood you in good stead at that
Yeah,
moment,
yeah.
like 1 is working for me right now.
Yeah, I felt like a powerful woman at that point.
What I was looking for when I put this together, I tried to find a congregational situation that could be a little practical application. And one of the things that I'm trying to help us set up at Bethlehem is a better dialogical relationship so that when we go to, by the time we go to vote on something, we have a relationship with each other that we can trust each other and we can come up with a solution that works and not have to go back to the drawing board 6 times and fight with each other, So I thought, okay, let's look at this. Something that we're actually doing right now is we're setting up a new fund, our endowment fund. It's applications management and ministry structures. And I thought I would let us look at this and see with the different worlds what might be the possible responses from people in those different worlds as to what we would need and how this should be done. So what I'd like to do here is have you break into 2 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Could we just break like that and you guys could go over there and you guys could sit over here and go through this. And I'm here as a consultant if you want me, but I'd like to let you guys kind of go through this and then we'll come back and talk about it. And this is just a little mini exercise to kind of get a sense of a practical application. There are many, but a practical application of this stuff. So you can break up any time and go into your little huddles and talk about this. And maybe if you guys want to take your chairs over in that corner and make a circle, it would be far enough from these people. Or you guys could go in the kitchen and put your chairs if you want by us. But, I just, so you can hear each other without bothering the other groups. And just call me if you want me to consult with you, because I don't want to impose my stuff on you. But if you have a question or a thought you want to run by me, I'm here. I'll read more fascinating aspects of Japanese culture in the meantime.
Well, that'd be her mode, wouldn't it? Follow training.
So what would be the responses of the type? I mean, we're one person or?
Worldwide. Well, if you feel unconnected.
Can I just speak for 1 minute? I should fill you in maybe on a little bit for people who aren't on council. The point we're at with this is that we have had a group of 5 or 6 people, I guess, looking at possibilities for this fund.
We're on council, so just talk to them.
Oh, okay. And we need to decide where we're going to go with this, where we're going to go with this as council and how we're going to bring it to the congregation. Okay, so that's where this can be useful today.
And we're to look at it as both type A and type B?
Yeah, exactly, because you can bet there's all 10 types in our congregation. And then how can we present it to the congregation? What do we need to look at, not only in how we present it, but how we set it up? What do we even call it,
I think we have a lot of people in the congregation who are World 3
Suggest what like say this type A person wouldn't say in their meeting if they were meeting.
Say,
to say there ain't much hope, they don't feel there's much
Well,
hope.
I mean,
So we'll let somebody else do it?
we did see
Okay,
ourselves,
so
you know, go
maybe
right down to nothing. But
let.
it's amazing how quickly it's gonna. I see,
Detail is
I don't
creating
see
an
the,
environment to the same thing you initially
or
get.
maybe I'm wrong,
That
but
makes
it
a
seems to be
difference.
doing pretty good
Right.
for us right now. Financially, we're doing okay.
Copy already existing document.
We could better, but I mean, so I,
And this one was kind of.
okay, because they, okay, we're getting back to that.
But if a
Yeah.
person is in
Oh, okay.
a attitude,
So let's see.
it would, I mean,
That-
if they're really in high vacation, then it doesn't matter that we're doing okay financially,
No.
because,
That fun, they don't have to keep it.
Well, we can do this. We can do this.
Well,
We just have to.
I'm not
I
saying
guess-
that's right.
I guess maybe I have to picture myself in that a little bit as to how we're using that. How are we going to use it? We don't know that yet.
Well, that's
Yeah, but
what
you're not
we're
there.
supposed to
It's
know.
No, I guess
And you can, but we don't have to.
This is what I am
but
getting
maybe.
And then
from some people from there.
another
You
idea
know,
is still which you have, say, no, we can create our own, right? And would be, how can we do
Or even like look at the mission given and revise it at the end.
Well, do you think that that's really true, or do you think that they want to use the interest of the money?
They were watching.
And we may come back and talk more ideas on
Because
how this.
I can see that part. I can see you have so much interest that
This might find out like where,
why not leave it like that? I'm just throwing it
Yes.
out, and
No,
there is
like,
no
this committee,
interest.
what would
But
you say?
again, of course, if we all know how to do it. And maybe that's how we should,
This
it's
one,
not
I thought, these
necessarily.
people who are really interested in justice, they're gonna want that.
It's very interesting. I think it all comes back to this question.
That will
The world.
make the world more just. That'll be really.
Outside of the congregation.
Right, yeah, so they'll be really.
And I think that could,
Push for,
The council to use.
what do you call that, like a mission
Outreach.
outreach, push for outreach. In the goals
Right.
of the
Type of thing. I don't, you know,
And
the way
if
the vote
we're,
went.
that's the good
well,
side.
that's,
So
I think they were several, I think we had some no votes there for various reasons, so I don't
Yes.
think we.
So one thing is,
Because,
and
you know,
they're
I'm sure the
right,
communication was not good.
they got their own, they can't stay outside of their own. What they think is an unjust thing.
If you just go ahead with something without
But they're so
asking, or
angry,
if they
they may
don't
not even be
ask,
able to articulate it, I don't know.
that's
Or
what,
they
that's what
might,
things were going. And Mark Cole was there with all his fights.
say, I'm on the committee and I'm interested in
So
property.
we're gonna,
I think we should use this money just for this property, or, you know, or if you're in music, I want to do it just for fun of music.
Yeah,
You know, they're
so
gonna,
I have my
my
So,
agenda.
what else did they-
My
use on
agenda, personal, my
they should have
agenda
done it
Right.
was
before,
the one that
Right.
had.
for council.
What feels, what they feel is important to them, they're
And then
gonna
we
try to
could,
justify.
we could have
it.
like a little sub list, it could be property, right, it has to.
Yeah, it's all,
I'll tell you one thing,
It could be.
Yeah,
We had to do something.
when we first found out about this,
So that was all.
I suggested number one, the band was a big deal. We buy a new church band. Second was
I
like,
know.
even loan these churches out of the coast, we're what, trouble about that time, $50,000.
well, that's what I'm saying, I think we all have to look at ourselves.
Yes.
Public for that.
However, we
Yeah.
did inform.
So I don't know where I was on some
Well,
of these
that sounds
things.
like
You
a
want
lot
that
to
to
go,
go.
the band would be a personal, or I mean, in-house thing, but it's not just a personal thing, because it's gonna provide stuff for other people.
But there was been justice there, I thought the band.
We- Right, we used it, we borrowed it, and didn't buy it back,
Yeah,
permanently used it.
yeah,
And that you wanted the money to get some, that we would.
right, we were
You know, we
supposed to
can
do
still do
that.
it.
And so then they should have.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the unhealthy.
Yeah, that was now healthy.
Yeah.
But I understand, you know, and it happened very quick.
Well, we know, because it was at the meeting,
So
it
it's
was last
like
year.
this, didn't we?
It's
No, no, no.
commission.
This was one.
Oh, okay.
So that's okay. That's all we know. And we learn from that.
Exactly.
right? So.
See, this is the same.
There are
Yes.
people that still think
Good idea.
the few times we need a van, it'd be much cheaper to just go rent the track van and rent one, and that might be true.
60
Yeah.
bucks a day,
Yeah,
150
but
bucks.
you know, that's sort of a side issue, because if the river comes, if the.
No, right,
if
exactly.
she-
That's another
if she
issue.
does,
Right.
We're a council.
Why
End
did
of
they
this year,
fund?
we end up,
Put it in with all
why
the.
can't we
Or,
have it in?
well, who's gonna listen to me?
No.
So just do what you want.
But I kind of tend to forget about some
So
of
they
these
vote.
things sometimes.
That's
I
aggressive.
was an angry person that lined up, we know they would have a personal agenda.
So that would be the type of
Everything on the-
What's the point?
I think they, with the blinds, the concerns of others, like he might suggest, and people says, oh, no, but, you know, another, they more or less are just gonna, I don't know what's the right word, but everyone else's idea isn't even worthy.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't care if she lost my bell. We need to make it worse than she needs bells from bell. Okay?
That's right. Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
Let's sit down and
See, it's
talk about
not.
it.
Yeah.
Would they say something in that?
That's very.
You're right, doing the diabetes.
I know.
You know, you have a type 2 problem.
Yeah, I gotta focus on the positive and then.
Well, that's, at least you are doing that.
I'm recognizing it.
She's focusing on the positive more than negative.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
plus.
it is, this is easier though, if you're gonna stop on it, you don't want to give that money away.
But this
You
is-
have
this
to
is-
build up your fund.
We could only use like half of the interest or something like that.
Maybe not any,
So
you
now,
know,
what,
just build a fund.
Build it, let's
For
go.
how many years, whatever.
Until we have a $500,000, then nothing gets spent.
Maybe
Yeah,
build
like,
one.
Till we get more than anybody else.
I don't think what's the point?
That's your thing.
The stock market takes care of a lot of that.
But,
Yeah, that's right.
Hunters want to watch
we want to
That's
share,
why we need.
so, we want to figure out a way.
Yeah,
to
but
get
we're-
our investment fund. Right. Figure out,
I think that,
spending plan.
I invite others to share with you that. So in other words, going to Brown to each member saying,
Right.
what do you think we should use the money
And
in
get
the fund
ideas.
for? Get
To
this,
get
that's
ideas
probably,
for spending.
now that would be probably the paid person.
Oh,
that's
well,
on the
that's
committee.
not it.
Yeah.
So far.
So far,
So-
yeah.
Until you find out that was stupid.
Oh,
Investigate ideas of parishioners.
The responses they're asking for are what these people's responses are to the second project.
well, then I even larger, and then we're supposed to.
Our response is back to their.
That doesn't mean they have to stay there.
Yeah.
You know, they behind it.
Because.
Well, maybe you
We'll ignore it.
I think, yeah, that rural forum, let's give most of the money.
How you just.
Like I said, I think it's not to be like, basically what the agenda is now,
I
not
don't know that you're
for
changing that much, but.
Internal
expenses.
budget.
You know,
Well, I'm thinking of the general fund, not for the general fund, let's use it for outreach, you know, mission.
We don't think we need to use Facebook.
No.
It's okay, when Cliff calls it, he won't call it.
We're gonna do it wrong.
Yeah.
So it might be inaction, no matter what we're doing, it's wrong, we're so screwed up.
Coming up for departure, and in former days, a bonfire was lighted at the gate. Ceremonies indicative of the purification necessary with the removal of a dead body. It's not a happy day for the wife.
I was saying, if it's someone like the kid around the house that doesn't do any work, it's like a dead body.
I can say about my son, 4 hours a night at work.
That, they don't do that for their sons.
So I've got a child that loves to work for other people, but not for
Not
us.
at home. I try to difficult.
Yeah, my son's
That's because they're at the age when they're out, they want to be out there making their own way and not worship their mom and dad anymore. That's called individuation.
It's actually good,
It's frustrating though. Okay, so what did you come up with here?
This started about 9 o'clock.
I know.
Now, this could be real useful stuff for us right now. Tell me about World One and endowment funds. Tell me about World One and endowment funds.
Okay.
Let's talk about type A first.
We put down this copy of the existing program, doesn't make any difference anyhow, we'll let someone else do it.
Okay, that's good. What did you guys get from that?
What's the point?
We got these people studying, let's let them study it, and let's move on,
I
right?
don't have
Yeah.
been in any
Exactly,
practical
okay.
until they vote.
Until they vote. Or until they have something they want, or until they have something that they want some of those funds dedicated to, and then they go and they say, oh, but it's not included in there what I wanted, you know? and- Okay, so type B, World One.
You said there is a purpose.
There's a purpose for this fund, let's make it accomplish that purpose. What did you guys get from that?
I suppose we can do this.
Huh, yeah.
We have a vision. It may be temporary or whatever, but we've got something.
Right there, yeah, there's a vision, yeah. There's a world of difference, isn't there, between, this is why I argue with Paul Jones, the guy who developed this who first developed this concept. Because I think there's actually 10 worlds. You know, the two may be related. You know, there may be two related worlds, but they're worlds apart, aren't they? Like just that whole, like, what the heck, you know, just get on with it. Let somebody do it and get on with it because it's not going to make any difference. Or, you know, this money could make a difference. There's a reason why we're here. There is a kingdom, and we can use this for the kingdom. You know, there is a heaven. It's the difference between having that window in the treehouse, you know, to see up and see the vision.
It was in response that we were having problems. How do you respond to that?
Oh, well, for responses, I was thinking just what we're talking about. What would the responses of the people be?
Okay,
Yeah.
she
Okay.
tried to do too much.
Okay,
Right.
so how would we respond as a church? Given that, that's a really good point. How would we as a church respond to that? Well, let's wait till we finish and then look at that part. Okay, let's go down all the worlds, okay? So, have we said enough about World One?
We also thought that the people in type B could say we could use some of what another group created so that we wouldn't have to start off with nothing and use that to help structure the new thing.
So like we might look at the Mission Gift Fund or something and see where that is, and it might be a little different, but that's a starting point, something like that. Okay. Or look at what some other churches have done.
Right,
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so World 2 Type A, what would be their agenda or their interest in this?
Give it all away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not ours anyway.
Get rid of it.
Are you
But
talking
make sure
about
you- World 2 Type A.
they're angry and blind to the concerns of others?
That would be probably blind to the concerns of the other worlds.
To give it away.
Well, they're angry about injustice. They're not blind to the concerns of people out there, the poor or whoever. They're blind to the concerns of people in other worlds. They think that they're so pulled into the dilemma of world injustice. You know, the social. These are the like rabid social justice people. You know, not good. The whole church should be doing social justice, and that's all. You know, what are we wasting time here in worship for when we should be out there on the street corners with the poor, in solidarity? You know, and we need some of those in the church because you know, like we need like I'm thinking who's that bishop in Central America who was shot speaking you know, he spoke in spite of the danger to his own life, the message of justice and injustice in that part of the world. You know, we need people like that in the church.
Well, I kind of thought of them
This is the Dorothy Day person, you know.
that they had their personal agenda, and they weren't necessarily listening to other people.
Yes.
They had a solitary, personal agenda based on some anger about some injustice.
But their personal agenda will be about the injustices in the world. Okay? It'll be about the poor who are out there, and we have so much.
And without those people, you might not be aware of all, any group of people that are the radicals. And we might not like it, but we're certainly listening, we're seeing it going on. And if they weren't out there doing it, then we probably would just sit back here and not.
You know, in the 60s, when women needed to have a voice, the last thing I wanted to go do was go out to a bonfire and wear my bra. That was before I had my reductive mammoplasty. But now you know another of my secrets. No, seriously speaking, you know, I wasn't rabid, but I sure wanted them to be opening those doors for me so I could walk through. You know, we do need some of those people. But the anger just as often, you know, it's the angry people who, you know, I mean, if it's really perverted, it's those people who stand out with the signs that say God hates fags, you know. Those people would say they're working for a justice issue. If it's really perverted. The anger can become a cancer and eat you up. So when we move, but what would let's say moderate World 1 type A's, not the really ugly ones, but the moderate World 1 type A's, what would they say? They would say, give it all away, you know? Who should we give it to? Build a new church that can house a huge food bank, or take it to some agency that works, and it might be to like a mission place, to a school in Guatemala, flood victims, yeah, something like that, you know. Okay, what about type A, World 2? Type B. Or type B, rather, World 2.
Well, I think there is an outreach in the goals of these folks. So imagine whatever kind of justice goal. It could be internal or external to your own congregation. We thought of the band fund that we borrowed from it and didn't pay it back, and that's not just, that's not fair, and that's an issue for people who are really concerned about justice. So that could be paid back, finish that. You know,
To look after that, away. Or these are the people who will say, we have to dedicate a certain amount of this to whatever mission we want to say, whatever altruistic type of, you know. These people will probably say more than a tithe, you know, more than 10%. Whereas, you know, like rather than, you know, we want the, not, you know, we want, you know, everybody probably in the church will say we want to take a 10% tithe. You know, that's kind of basic for this kind of funds. But these people will say, let's consider more than a tithe, you know.
But they're open to dialogue.
Oh yeah, but they're balanced and open to hearing everybody. They aren't closed off to the other aspects, because there might be another group that says, well, no, because a tithe is plenty because we've got all these other things that need to be done too. So they are balanced. You know, these are the people of Luke's gospel. Okay, these are the people who really identify with Luke's gospel, the gospel of compassion to the little people, to the hurting. Okay, World 3. Have we said enough about World 2? Anything else you want to say? World 3.
I have none.
Keep it all in the bank.
yeah, there's never enough.
If we spend it, it's just going to be gone. These are the people. These are the people in the type A World 3 people. These are the people who are still hung up on the fact that a year and a half ago you couldn't pay the phone bill. It's scary. It's really scary. And everybody got scared by that. But the other people moved on and said, "But we can get out of this. You know, you paid it back. We're coming up." But these people are still hooked on that moment. So we have to honor that because it's scary for them. And we don't have to go into that moment and stay hooked there with them, but we have to honor that and nurture them and respect that they're coming out of something that's very real for them.
We also thought there might be a positive outcome, even from the type A attitude, which could be that these folks might have some ideas about how to get more donors. Since they are interested in the accumulation thing and feel unsafe, they could help us see what kind of good things the church does that people would want to leave money to it on their death or whatever.
I suspect that would especially be the type B World 3 people. You know, because these people are saying, okay, let's do something creative about this. This worries me, but let's do something creative. Whereas the type A's will just get into the worry and the fear. And they really will be afraid, and they'll think the rest of us are just crazy, you know. And I've been there, and you know, I mean, my husband has a lot of World 3 in him. He gets very afraid of you know, not being able to be, you know, having to be poor when we're old, not being able to look after ourselves and that sort of thing. And he's very realistic about it. He's not a type A, but he keeps. I'm not like that financially. I'm not a World 3 financially at all. You know, money comes through my fingers like this as far as my personal money is concerned. Not the church's money, but my own. You know, when the church's money, I feel gospel imperatives there. But,
Oh, you feel it, you say earrings.
earrings. You know me, don't you? And shoes.
Yeah, that's right.
But at least I go to TJ Maxx. No, I mean, I would just assume, you know, give it to somebody or whatever. You know, I mean, when we lived in Africa where there was lots of poverty around us, like we were always really poor because anything we got, and Cliff too, but he did it because of a social justice thing. I guess I did too. I guess it was partly that, but it was just, to me, it wasn't ownership of the stuff and the money for me. It was just there to be shared. You know? So, but World 3 type B people, now, what's the value of these people in our congregation?
I think they were good at figuring out a spending plan that was...
And an investment plan, too.
And that was balanced. And the idea that they would value other people's input, they could get ideas from a larger batch of people.
And I think that they would also keep us balanced, that we're not going to spend it all, you know. At the time when you were really financially strapped and this money came to you, it was probably the healthy World 3 people, a lot of them, who said, hey, we can't just spend this on daily runnings, you know, of the church. We have to use this we have to invest some of it at least, you know. No, Annette has to leave. She says we have to go out in the rain, no matter what. It'll be gone. It'll be gone by then, I'm sure. I'm sorry, Annette, I couldn't resist it.
I'm getting all excited.
Have you got a big date tonight?
It's Stagecoach Banquet.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
We have a party.
You're having a party at your house?
No. We're going to, our neighbor's daughter got married in the West, and so she's having a party.
But it's not in the neighborhood.
It's 5:30, but we're going to
That's okay. Okay, so can we move on to World 4?
Yep.
Okay, World 4 Type A. What would these people look? How would these people look at it?
Well, I just said, give it all to God. Maybe that's the only way we're going to atone for us. I mean, this is a sacrifice, a sacrifice.
These people would tithe, but they would tithe for a different reason. You know, these people would tithe because this is what God wants of us, and we're going to be in big trouble if we don't. A lot of the fundamentalist churches that, you know, they check up on you by your income tax if you haven't been tithing. That's what it's based on. It's like you are a sinner if you don't tithe. Oh yeah, some of them do. Oh yeah. And you know who really does that is the Mormons. You're a sinner if you don't tithe. That's how it's looked upon. We say let's work toward tithing because it's a healthy gospel thing to do. In fact, it's even a gospel imperative to work toward. But we don't say God will, you know, if you get to heaven and you haven't been tithing, God's going to look askance at you.
You know, I think it's so funny that when I first heard about tithing and things, it seemed like it was, and the general approach is kind of soft. So it's like, well, this is something to work toward and so forth. And it seemed like, you know, that was a lot of your income to give to the church. Now, I think it's so funny that God gave everything and then said, you get to keep 90% of it.
Absolutely.
And
well,
I
under the government.
back 10%. And I just think it's so funny how
is different.
Yeah.
You're a
What I can't get
handful
over,
person,
what
aren't
I can't get over is we give, a lot more than that to the government and we don't even
Yeah.
complain.
Oh, we do.
Well,
you? They don't have a choice.
Well,
but we managed to get along without that part of our income. Now, I think it's a lot different too, Annette, for a young family with 3 or 4 or 5 kids and they want, they're really struggling to put food on the table. A tithe for them might be $10 a week,
I guess it just gave me another flash
Perspective.
insight into God, who would let you have 90%. With anybody we would deal with money, we would say, gosh, if you get half,
50-50, yeah.
is fair, and to only want back, 10%, and you keep 90.
That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat, yeah. Pretty neat, yeah.
Is the definition of a tithe 10%
Well,
or a
that's the
portion?
scriptural. That's the scriptural definition.
10%?
Yeah. And that's what people generally mean, but, our church is very, we say that's also a cultural definition in scriptural times. There was a reason. You tithe 10% of your crop, for example, to the emperor, that sort of thing. Tithing was not just a church thing in those days. But I think it's something that's been adopted by some churches in order to be able to say to people, you better tithe or you're a sinner. Again, it's a wrong use of scripture. It's selectively choosing which parts of scripture to enforce.
Yeah, 90% of what one person has is quite different from
Oh,
another.
yeah. No
That's
question.
why the widow's mite is so
Absolutely. And Annette, I think what you said, that neat thing about the 90% that you get to keep, that's definitely, if you were world poor, it would be definitely a type 2 attitude. It's like, wow, I'm so grateful for what I've got, I can give 10% back happily because it's not only that God has gifted us financially, God has gifted us with eternal life, with salvation, with grace.
Yeah, I think that you would get a lot of very generous people in this type being world poor. Very
Yes,
generous.
yes. And that's the whole thing of the program that Jamie had. Some of you were in that, right? And the whole basis of it was God gave it to us first, That's what I am trying to speak in stewardship during the whole year. That's what our church does, but it hasn't always said that, so it takes a while for people to begin to hear it unless you go into a concentrated course like what you guys did, which was really good. So, can we move on to World 5?
Sure.
What would a World 5 tithing person say? Sorry, I didn't close my
We didn't even notice.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. I couldn't even ask who in your group noticed.
I'm an SFJ and
You
I
can ask, but you might be wrong.
That's right.
No, I think anybody would notice it.
Well, all this distrust makes you anticipate some very negative things here. That you can't get to the thing, what they're doing, you don't trust them. You got to keep it because you may be victimized again, you may be wrong.
And, Bethlehem has been victimized in our particular case, so let's be careful because we don't know what's coming down to Pastor Donna could leave next year and who knows.
Yeah.
Or she might not be who we think she is,
Or could it even be distrust of the committee members themselves?
Right.
We need safeguards over the fund.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And
if
that's all right too. But
they could go a different way. They could say there are so many suffering, hurting people in the world that we need to give this all to like an AIDS fund or, to build a wing at the hospital or, whatever. I mean, they could go in that way to say, well, we're going to find a good place to give it, but we've got to find people who are suffering and hurting,
Well, that sounds
Was
like
that
the
the
B
B?
one.
The B?
Because
Yeah.
you're aware of the community.
Right, yeah.
And you
More
want to
likely,
give something.
more likely the B one would do that.
Mhm. We thought local concerns would be easier for them to deal with. It's more visible and real. So the Hispanic church and
Yeah.
Hispanic
Yes, that
stuff like that.
either the World 2 people or the World 5 people would probably want to give to the Hispanic church. See, the World 2 people could identify with the Hispanic church because most of them are, illegal aliens and they're very poor and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But the World 5 people would identify with them because they're suffering.
Mhm.
So, what is the overall response to this reality that there are so many different possible ways of looking at this? How do we need to deal with, now we're just talking about one situation here, but this can be a general awareness for us for lots of situations, whether it's from worship to funding, to council, to governance, to anything, you know. How do we need to deal with a situation like developing a new fund? Where do we go with this?
You need a lot of communication.
A lot of communication.
I think that maybe even up until now, there hasn't been much communication here. And I know I sit back sometimes wondering what they're doing. What are they doing there?
Well, and if somebody doesn't tell you, or people who are good at asking the questions to bring out the real quiet people, there's that tendency to guess at what's in their head. And like you say, unless it's communicated, then there's all the guessing, and then you may guess way wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
So this helps you understand that there are a lot of different things going on in different people's heads. And we probably knew that, but we need to find different education.
And this is not only true with that particular group, but in watching that, your tapes, I heard Marilyn Huntersville say how important it is that each committee, each month,
Be reporting.
be reporting. And
And
then
she
we
really
know,
thinks
and
that's
and I agree with that. And I think the churches where they are doing that, that's a much better communicable thing than what we're not doing.
One of the
We
things,
have some that are, and are very good about it.
Yes.
but one of the things that we want to do with this new protocol, when we get all the reports in ahead of time, is put them on a bulletin board. We'll have a bulletin board for committee
Or put it in the
reports.
newsletter.
Or put 'em in the
Here's
newsletter.
Here's an example, you can read that.
From another church?
And I haven't even read that one, but I know.
But, you know, we want to make them generally available to the people.
Council corner on a bulletin board with all the.
But I too, as long as it's done, but I think
Yes.
that's very important.
We want to develop a protocol for that kind of communication. Where we get back to this fund, one of the things that I really believe is that we need lots of talking, quiet talking, communication. And I believe that the council needs to have time, just as council, to sit with it, with their recommendations and talk about it, so we can sort of figure out what it seems to mean to us, and then get them and say, now, this is what we're thinking, is this what you were meaning by this, and that sort of thing. And then we put something together and we bring it to the congregation, but we might actually have, you know how we're having some listening sessions for Stephen Ministry, for the not Stephen Ministry, James Company. Just got the wrong apostle there. For James Company, for the stewardship drive. We may have a listening session or two before we even give the recommendations to the congregation. And then another, that we might end up giving it to them at the January meeting or the December meeting. And then we might say, okay, now we're going to have a meeting and we're going to have some listening sessions. And then in March, we'll have a meeting to vote on this or finalize it. But we can't rush it through and rubber stamp it. Because otherwise there's going to be some people out there who won't understand what it's about. And what will happen is they'll just say, well, nobody ever asked us about this, you know. And that's how you promote passivity. And then you promote passive-aggressive behavior. You promote people going, your gossip is a passive-aggressive behavior. And we have lots of that. Every church has lots of that. But we want to develop systems that will stop that so everybody feels heard. Now, everybody won't get all their way, hopefully. This is a very big, important thing. There's a lot of money there. It's very important to the future of Bethlehem and Bethlehem's ministries, you know, to our building, to our ministries, to everything. And so it's very important that we do have a chance now. We can use this as a prototypical situation of developing a process for handling big things, you know, that we don't just rubber stamp it and put it through quickly. And what we will need to do is communicate to the people who have been studying it for some time that we really respect what they have been studying. And so we're not undervaluing what they have brought to us. They have given us like a trampoline that we can be firm on and then use to jump from, you know, or to jump on or whatever. They've given us a foundation. But the rest of the church gets to study stuff too and understand stuff, and they can actually be explainers for the rest of the church's questions, and they might run the listening sessions, or, you know, we won't just say, okay, you've had your time, you're finished, that's it, you know. we don't want them to feel like we don't value what they have done. But we have to help them understand that we're developing a new way of processing things at Bethlehem that is a little slower, but hopefully that more people can buy into it in the end. And it'll be the same when we, you know, we are way overdue for a rewrite of our Constitution, and we're going to have some help with that. And we'll have a committee, and then, you know, that's going to take a long, long time, because there will be lots of conversation with the congregation about that. It won't be just, you know, 5 people sit down in a room for several hours and come up with a new Constitution. And then everybody just votes yes because they're afraid that if they say no, they will be looked askance at or something like that. You know, this is a really, really good chance for us to demonstrate a better process, don't you think? I mean, it's like a gift to, you know, talk about a gift fund, you know. This is a chance for us to do something healthy here. But we have to do it because it's never been done this way before at Bethlehem. We really have to do it while validating the people who have been studying it and the study committee that we have had. They've been, in effect, a study committee for most of the year. Any other thoughts before we move on about this?
I think there's the ideal hope that you bring along a lot of people, as you say, about the endowment thing. So you have these possible meetings or open discussion at various times and listening to different folks. At the same time, it's important to realize that there may not be a lot of people who want to talk about it. Just like you look at these worlds, some people just don't have a lot of concern about money.
Right.
And so the ones that do should definitely be taking part in this.
They should have the chance.
Yeah, yeah. And
so we mustn't get too high expectations and be disappointed.
right.
Yeah.
And then I think the acknowledgement of this committee is extremely important. If the committee does the work they did in a year, comes up with a document, I think it would be a disaster if the document were not taken very seriously and pretty much approved. It's not like
Well,
there can't be
studied
more
very
input,
seriously. Yeah.
but I would never serve on another committee like that. If I had been on that committee, which I wouldn't have, if I had, and we came up with a document, I would never serve again if it were not pretty much approved. Because that's a tremendous amount of work goes down the toilet. And you know, you just say, for why? Then to get other people to serve on other committees when that would get around would be a disaster.
Well, but the other thing I want them to know is that we're taking their work very seriously. We're studying it very seriously, so we understand it. And that's what I was concerned about last Monday when they came, was most of us hadn't really had a chance. Some of us hadn't even had a chance to read it, like you just come back. And others, and you haven't even had a chance, have you? And others, we hadn't had a chance to talk among ourselves yet. So we weren't ready yet to, because for me, maybe it's the way I learn, but I will learn way more about just reading that. It was like so much for me. But when I can sit down in a group and Wayne can say this and you can say that, you know, you can say that, I'll learn a lot more about that document so that when we do meet with them, we will have some sense of what we want to ask them about, and we might also have some suggestions, you know, and we will be able to say those suggestions in ways that will be palatable for them and comfortable for them. And then when we present it as the council to the congregation, we'll be able to stand behind it too, you know, and support it. So, you know, I was very concerned last week. I didn't want to give it short shrift because that's exactly what I was worried about, and that is that it would be not validated strongly enough. There's a lot in that document, and you know, in any document, if I write a term paper for you know, I go back to it again and again, and I'll change some stuff and reword some stuff and everything to really fine tune it. Right. And there's nothing wrong with council doing that, and there's nothing wrong with bringing it to the congregation for a second fine tuning. It really says you've given us something very, very good here, something we can work with as a congregation, but the council and the congregation does the final work, and that's the way that the system works. And the council has to do that because council has to take responsibility for any financial stuff. That's, that's in our Constitution. But, so that was my concern last Monday, is I didn't feel like we were ready to give them the time that the depth of time. It wasn't even about length of time, although that was too short too, but the depth, the quality of time that they deserved. So anyway, are we ready to put this away for a little while? And I want to play. I figured out what I can get out of let me give you this first because it has the words on it. Worship and music pretty nicely. We've got the Sunday school operating. It's going to grow, obviously, and improve, but it's operating nicely, and we've got our confirmation program up and running. It's limping a little, but it's up and limping, let's say. At least we've got it. We've got a program, we've got a team concept, and Ed and I are going to be meeting more about the youth, coordinating the youth activities, but at least there's something happening. So we've done a lot in the last 9 months as a leadership team together, and I'm really pleased. Obviously, I've been working extremely hard. I've been working pretty much 8 days a week. I haven't even taken most of my vacation time this year, and I don't resent that at all. That's just the reality of what needed to be done at Bethlehem this first year. And I'll carry over some of that. But what I'm going to be looking for in the next year is a clarity of the call from Bethlehem. When I came here, it sounded to me as if you were saying, and it sounded to the synod as if you were saying that you wanted a pastor who would be a leader, who would lead Bethlehem into a future that, we would define together. But I'm not saying that, I don't have this vision of, we're going to be the biggest church in the synod or any of that stuff. I've gone to a few workshops where, there are really dynamic pastors from really dynamic churches, but they wouldn't be models that I don't think Bethlehem would want, sort of almost like the non-denominational churches, only they were Lutheran churches. I don't think that's where we want to go as Bethlehem. But there's two possibilities. One is that Bethlehem wants to really move into the future and be a growing church, and what I mean by growing is we may never get really, really big, but growing in that we're always bringing in people from the bottom, keeping maybe the same size or somewhat larger, whatever the Lord says. And open to that and to progress and change and evolution over time. Or we can be a church that stays pretty much the way we are now and maintains. And if we do that, we will be able to maintain for a certain length of time, and then Bethlehem will eventually cease to exist because people, we're burying a lot of people. And we have to, if we want to be a church, if you decide, because I'm going to retire and go away sometime. Pastors aren't allowed to stay. I probably would love to stay at Bethlehem and die here, but we're not allowed to. So a few years from now, if I stay at Bethlehem until I retire, then I'll retire and go someplace else. And it's really you people who have to decide which you want. Do you want to be a church that will last for you until you don't need a church anymore? And then the few people who come in and are younger can decide if they want to continue or if they want to go elsewhere, and Bethlehem will become some sort of other entity or a non-entity. That's okay. There are certainly lots of ELCA churches like that. Or you can decide if you want to be the kind of church that keeps evolving and growing, and by growing I mean spiritually growing. We may grow in size. That would be up to God or up to Bethlehem, but please don't hear me saying I want to build a huge, mega church. That's not my agenda. And in that case, I can lead you to do that. I can do it either way. I can maintain or I can lead. Maintaining means mostly, you do Sunday worship, you visit the sick, you marry and bury, you look after couples in crisis, you do that kind of stuff, okay? It's the maintenance stuff. Leading means you bring a vision, you help the people to find their vision, and you move into the future and develop something that's perhaps God's plan and the people's plan together. Either way I can do it, but I need to have clarity, because if I invest myself in what I heard you calling me to when I first came here, and you don't support that, then I will burn out. Okay, that's what when the Stephen ministers will hear me on Tuesday speaking. Burnout happens for two reasons. One, you aren't living your own call, your real, true call. You're living somebody else's. Somebody else told you should be a pastor or a whatever, teacher, whatever. And so you do it, but it's not really what your heart is calling you to. But if you have your own authentic call and you're living, and you probably will burn out if, the second factor is if you invest that call, that vision, in a system that will support it to be lived the way you need to live it. Okay? So, the Synod sent me here because I was pretty clear when I sent out my traveling papers about what I said my call was. And I said I need to go to a church that wants to work with the pastor and support the pastor and collaborate to be church. And they sent me to Bethlehem because that's what Bethlehem said you were wanting. What I've experienced since I came to Bethlehem is a very mixed message. Okay? What I experience is I bring something to council and council says, we're not going to look at this. What I experience is I give months of notice and we get how many people coming to a workshop? You know? What I experience is, yeah, we really want to do it, but we really don't want to invest in it. We don't want to put the energy into it that it will take. Now, that's okay if that's the case. If the people of Bethlehem don't want to put the energy into being a growing and dynamic church, then I can be a maintenance pastor. But I can't invest in trying to be a leader pastor if it's not going to be supported by the church, because you can't do that alone. You're just going to go crazy and you're going to end up completely burned out. You're going to lose interest, you're going to withdraw, and it's going to become a job rather than a call. Now, I've worked in hospice before. I can do hospice. I can do hospice in a church, if that's what Bethlehem wants. So I'm going to be looking over the months to come. You know, this is not any sour grapes, any complaints. This is just, I'm going to be looking now that we're at a point we could maintain, and we could be quite a happy church maintaining. Okay, I'm going to be looking to see what Bethlehem wants for me, and I'm going to, you know, probably 6 months from now or some place down the road, I'm going to articulate pretty clearly what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what I mean, not just what I'm hearing with my ears, okay, what I'm hearing from your behavior. And I'm going to say, okay, this is what you're letting me know. This is what I'm going to do. Now, if in fact you choose to be the maintenance church, then 3 years, 2.5 years from now, when my contract comes up, then I would have to reassess that. Okay? And it doesn't mean I wouldn't renew my contract or be willing to stay. I would just have to reassess it. I'd have to pray about it. I'd have to talk to the bishop and say, this is what clearly Bethlehem wants. Is this where you want me? I would have to pray and say, God, is this what you want me doing? I'd have to go into my own heart and say, is this what I want to do with the rest of my ministry years? You know? And I can't say what I would come up with then. I could quite possibly stay, but I might not. And that's not a threat. That's just, you know, that's just the way it is. I'm trying to be honest here so that you can help the rest of the church to know what I'm looking for. One way or the other. I'm just looking for a clear message. What do you want? Do you want to listen to what I have to offer to lead you into the future and respect that and work with me and share your part of that, you know, and that means share your vision. It doesn't have to only be Donna's vision. But do you want to collaborate and be a team together? Or do you want to be constantly pulling back and saying, no, we say we want to do that, but really we don't? Because that's hard on both of us. So if you don't really want to, then that's okay. Let's just get it clear and let's go with what we got. Is that fair? And what are you hearing me say? I'd like a little feedback here.
Cannot just be your vision, it has to be wanting to.
Yeah, it has to. And my vision could go either way. I just need to know what it is. You know, I can do either way.
We can't say, okay, we like your vision, but as long as someone else will do it.
Yeah, or we don't really want to do it, you know. We, as a council, for example, we really want to continue with all the, you know, what I see is a lot of backbiting and infighting and triangulating in leadership at Bethlehem. A whole lot of it. You know, to the point where there are people who won't come to congregational meetings anymore at Bethlehem. They come, and then when there's a little bit of a tension arises, they walk out before it even develops. They know, you know. If you want to go on that way, fine, I'll just sit back and I'll let it go. Yeah.
Do you think, though, that part of this is that we have a lot of healing?
Oh, absolutely. I have no problem with the time involved,
Can't we get
Kathleen.
into a lot of vision until we do some more healing?
Absolutely. But if that's the case, if people want to do the healing, then you've got to get on board. You know, I have the skills to help you.
Maybe that's what we need.
I have the skills to help you, but you have to say, we'll come along. I can't do it. Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole lot of healing to do. You know, there's a whole lot of healing to do. But if that's the case, then we have to all commit our time and our energy to that. And we have to also be willing to be honest and to be able to say, oh, you know, we mustn't tell somebody that they did something inappropriate there because it might hurt them. Because if I do something inappropriate, I want somebody to tell me so I can grow and change, you know? And we all have to be open to that. Otherwise, you just keep repeating and repeating. You know, when something isn't working, our human tendency, whether it's in a marriage or a family or a friendship relationship or a larger system like a church, is to do more of the same thing harder. You know, maybe we're just not trying hard enough. And so whatever the problem is gets stronger, okay? And that's what's going on at Bethlehem right now. I'm trying to say, whoa, stop. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying, hey, some of this stuff is dysfunctional, and it doesn't work. And if, in fact, we want to become a collaborative, you know, much more healthy system, then please listen. I've got some ideas. At least try them. Don't say, oh, we don't want to try this. We haven't got time. We're too busy. We're too busy going along, trying harder, and going faster with the old ways. You know? Because I'm just going to stop giving ideas. I'm going to stop trying. Because I'm going to become exhausted and, disillusioned? You know? Now, I won't get at all exhausted and disillusioned if I see people trying and still making mistakes. I mean, that's, you know, what did they say? Relapse is part of recovery in the 12-step groups, you know? Or, you know, making mistakes is how we learn. But we have to be willing to make a mistake and say, whoops, that didn't work. Let's analyze it and try something else the next time. And then if we're going to do that, we have to be open to saying, maybe I was part of the problem. Maybe I was part of that mistake. Maybe I contributed to that. And that's okay, because I didn't know any better. I was trying, you know, I was doing my best. It's not, oh, Pastor Donna thinks I'm a loser or I'm stupid or something. It's not that at all, you know. The people who would come to me when I was a therapist with the biggest problems in their families or their marriages or whatever, and would really be open to that and would really try hard and gradually would change were the ones I was proudest of, you know. But they had to be willing to say, this isn't working. We've got to try something else. I'll give you an example. I had a couple that just fought and fought. And they fight in my office, they fight at home, they fight everywhere. And finally I said, look, you people, I can see a pattern to what you're doing, and it's not working. And I can see the patterns of Bethlehem very clearly. Next time you're having a fight at home, I don't care what you do, just do something different. Break the pattern. So the next time they had a fight, they were in the middle of the fight, suddenly she stopped, she got down on the floor, and she stood on her head. And they both ended up laughing. And then she said, well, Pastor Donna said, do something different, you know? Do something different. And I did something different. They ended up laughing and saying, okay, what we're doing obviously isn't working. Let's figure out what this problem is about and work on it. Now that wasn't really a therapeutic intervention, let's say. It wasn't a difference, but it was a difference in their pattern of relating. She broke it, you know? She broke it, and then they stopped and said, let's try something different in the way we're talking to each other. But what I've experienced at Bethlehem is if I say, look guys, what happened here wasn't healthy. It didn't work. It caused a problem rather than a solution. People say, we don't want to hear that. You know, we don't want to, oh, you mustn't tell so-and-so. You know, people get defensive. Well, that doesn't solve anything. We've got to, all of us, including me, because I'll make mistakes. You know, we have to be able to make mistakes. And we have to be able to stop and stand on our heads and laugh at ourselves and say, okay, let's try something else. Obviously, we have to go back to the drawing board. And this is the seed group who can help the rest of the congregation to learn that, if in fact that's what Bethlehem wants. Now, it may be that Bethlehem is an old enough family and a developed enough family that really what the people of Bethlehem want is to go on with the same patterns that have been there for a long, long time. You know, it is no accident that you had Mark Cole. Okay? You had Mark Cole because you had a dysfunctional call committee, where somebody came in and a small, I don't know the people, I don't know the proportion of the call committee, but a small proportion of that call committee, I guarantee you, came in and bulldozed through, this is the person we want, and everybody backed off, because that's what people do at Bethlehem. You know, okay, this is confidential here, right? Today, okay, I'm going to say something that's going to be really confidential. Grace is a microcosm of what happens at Bethlehem. Grace is a bully. And Grace is only a bully because for many, many years at Bethlehem, when she would make a mistake or say something inappropriate, nobody would call her on it. Nobody would love her enough to say, Grace, that won't work. That's not right. That's going to upset people or hurt people or whatever. Grace, you can't always get your own way. When somebody at Bethlehem talks loud enough, everybody backs away and says, oh, we're not going to upset his apple cart or her apple cart. That's part of the pattern that has to change. We have to start to say, you know, Margaret or Sherry or Wayne or whoever, you know, get off this bandwagon. It's not working. Now, I may not have a better plan at the moment, but let's sit down together and talk about this and figure out what will work, or get a group together and figure out a pattern or something that will work. We have to all be willing to do that, because that's the only way that growth can happen. Now, if Bethlehem doesn't want to do that, if it's too much of a risk for the people of Bethlehem, then I can sit back and I can just, you know, I mean, I sat back at that last congregational meeting and I just sat there like this, you know, just like, oh, I see this. I see this pattern. I see what's happening here, and it's so unhealthy, and it's so dysfunctional, and poor Ray was, you know, so kind of ambushed. But
I still disagree with that.
well, that's because you're so used to it, Ray. You're so used to that kind of behavior.
I think everyone has a right to their opinion.
They have a right to an opinion, but it has to be done appropriately. It has to be done appropriately. There was nothing wrong with the opinion whatsoever. It was the way it was done. There's nothing wrong with people with different opinions at all. But, you know, and that's just one example. I'm just using that as an example. Yep, Annette, you have a question or thought.
The first thing that I want to say is that I think the idea of clarifying our vision, our mission with you, and thereby clarifying
What you want from me.
what we perceive your role is, I think that's a good project. I'm not sure about the other assumption that there's this dichotomy between maintenance and growth.
Okay.
And that one can't maintain and grow. That there isn't a middle ground here, that maybe we can't grow as fast or as big as, in the exact same way that you might have some sort of vision of us growing, but that we can keep some of our patterns and some of our
The good stuff.
ways and still not die in a couple of years. And then the third thing, and this is very difficult for me to say, but you mentioned the congregation and the council having the ability to both listen and respect you. And I think that some of us don't always feel that there is that listening and respect from you of what we want to say.
Okay, then you need to call me on that, Annette, okay? I'm open to that. That's what it's about. It's about both ways, okay?
And there's, I think that there is a willingness on the part of these people on the council to be led, but that some of the tactics or the manner in which some of the ideas might be brought forward cause some feelings of intimidation or...
Well, tell me that then. Tell me that. Say, Pastor Donna, you're intimidating us. Don't tell us what this is about in a nicer way. Okay? Yeah, okay. No, that's fine. Tell me at the time, okay, Annette, so I know when it's happening.
I think it's happening right now.
Okay, I hear you, and I appreciate that. And that there is so much good at Bethlehem. There is so much good at Bethlehem. I have said many times, Bethlehem has everything for greatness. Everything. All the raw materials is there, and most of the relationships are so good. That's what we need to maintain. There isn't an awful lot that we need to change to be very healthy. And that's why I believe it can happen. If this, there are some churches in the ELCA that probably just need to sort of close down and start up someplace else. Not just in the ELCA, churches in all denominations are like this. But what has happened since I've been here is what I'm hearing is there's so much good that we don't have to pay attention to the problems, okay? Well, I will guarantee you that if we don't pay attention to the problems, that gradually the problems will eat away at the good, okay? And what happens is the bullies will take over and I use by bullies, I mean, I could just as easily say cancer, that the negativity will take over gradually. We are at a real crossroads, well, even a T-junction, we can go right or left in Bethlehem. And if we turn, we take our vehicle with us, we take Bethlehem with us, the history, the relationships, the warmth, the lovingness, all the goodness. But what we need to do is, it's almost like a couple who gets married to each other and they both come from families with a lot of dysfunction and they get married together and they say, we're not going to do this stuff anymore. We're making a new unit. But we don't want to close down Bethlehem and make a new unit, okay? But Annette, you have to tell me when you're, when you do speak up to me sometimes, and I appreciate that from you. And I can get very frustrated and speak very strongly. One of the things that I'm telling myself is to slow down. What you said, take time, But in order to slow down, I have to believe that the people want the growth, okay? Otherwise, I'll just back off. And that will be fine too. I'll be fine with that. At least till the end of my contract and probably longer, But And actually, I really believe right now, I see your hand just a second, wait, okay, I just want to say this thought or I'll forget it. I really believe right now that as far as a lot of programmatic stuff that we've been really working to establish this year, I think we should really slow down and just stay with what we've got for a while and not try to make too many more changes for a while, but stay with what we've got, really build on that and not now work on our relationships within those programs and that sort of thing. But it's very frustrating, and I'm sorry if I do get strident on that, I know I do, but I get very frustrated when people say, we want to develop this or that. We want to do it. And then I call a meeting and nobody comes, That they said they wanted to, And it's very difficult, So, but I can't, you tell me when to back off at, because I get frustrated. I love Bethlehem and I love the good things here. Wade, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I guess on one hand, I was hearing you say, if we have a meeting, we disagree, we can't come to a conclusion. But on the other hand, you're saying if we don't disagree with this person who does something, we're bad too.
No.
I guess on one hand, we shouldn't disagree, but then we should.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's a way to do it. For example, the congregational meeting, we use that as an example. When there was a committee that had some concern about what the council had suggested, the way to deal with that would have been to go to someone on the council, either the president or a council member or even myself, and say, we have some problems with what's going to come up at this congregational meeting, and we have some other ideas. If they come to me, and I don't know about Margaret or the other members of the council here, but I would have said, okay, let's delay the congregational meeting till we have some more listening time and figure out what the other ideas are. Because when you call the whole congregation in, they get sick of coming in and nothing being resolved. You know, they say this is a waste of time, not to mention the cost of the mailings and the time involved and everything. When we come to a congregational meeting, that's why I put out that proposal that we look at, you know, more talking time before we call a congregational meeting. There was nothing wrong with the other committee having concerns about the council's proposal, nothing whatsoever. And they should have been listened to. But the way they put it forth was they didn't even go to the people running the meeting and say, we want to put something on the agenda there that, you know, is about more conversation. That would have been another way to do it. Basically, they brought it in an ambush, and that's how it was done. They didn't probably intend it that way. That's the way it's been done before at Bethlehem. It does not mean it's a healthy way to do it, okay? You know, some people think, oh, Donna doesn't want to hear a different idea. That's not the case at all. We just have to do it more respectfully, okay, and more healthfully. Reilly, did you agree with that?
Well, after thinking about that situation and everything, I think you got to blame us, the council.
Oh, just as much.
We should have gone to that committee to explain our decision before we even moved on.
Right.
And a lot of things we do at council are wrong, inappropriate, the way,
Right.
that letter on protocol. The biggest mistakes in protocol is at council. There's a lot of things that need to get changed there.
And we can do this gradually.
Right, and that's where I think we need to start with that.
Right. I'm not blaming those people who came to that meeting the way they did, because this is the way it's been done at Bethlehem.
Right.
I'm not blaming council either. There's no blame being assigned here. It's just that it's not working, so let's not do more of it harder. Let's try to find a better way. Sherry.
Well, I just wanted to speak to this idea of healing. I know we've talked about it before, but I don't see a whole lot of it happening real intentionally. It might happen, you know, and I could see a good start of it maybe at council now. But I don't think it's happening intentionally in the congregation, and I don't know exactly how to do it. Maybe speaking more openly in church, in the sermon, something, because I don't think people are aware that they're still hurting, but I think there's so much distrust that.
Trust is one of the biggest issues at Bethlehem.
Yeah, and I think we need to work on that very.
And see, one of the problems that I've had as pastor, coming into that situation with the distrust, is that I can't speak too openly about the pain because they don't trust me enough.
That's right.
And every time I try, I get criticized.
So then we need to bring in an outside
Right,
source.
right, but
to
the
do
people
that.
don't want to do that. You know, people say, you know,
They're in denial.
I don't want to use names, but
Well,
I keep hearing complaints about, you know, for example, Lauren Nielsen or other people who come and tried, that was a waste of time, that's all a waste of time, you know. So it's really hard, Sherry, and it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take intentionality on our parts as the leadership. But what I'm trying to say here, I don't want to criticize anybody here. I really don't. I mean, you're all here, you know. I really appreciate that. I don't want to criticize anybody on council or any of our committees. Those are the people that are really trying to work. But what we have to do is we have to say, let's be intentional about figuring out what will work here. And I can't do that alone. I need all of you. Okay? So that's what I'm saying for the next while. If in fact, and what I'm hearing you say is that you do think that Bethlehem wants to move on and not be this, just remain the same. And if that's the case, then let's figure out together how to do that. And that's partially why I've decided this day and then the next day that we'll be together after this, okay? So, I didn't mean to start by, you know, coming on heavy to you people, and this is not a criticism in any way of you people. Or any group. It's not working. Okay, as you said, it's not happening.
No, it's not, and I don't know if the state that we are in we can do a whole lot of visioning
Until
until we are more in a trusting,
Well, we can vision that we do want to move toward trust. You know, you can
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
vision.
right.
It's just what you can vision, and that's what we're going to look at today, okay? Kathleen?
So much does come from the leadership, and I guess where do we get this idea that people don't want somebody? Where'd you get that?
People say that.
People say that. I know, but that's not enough for me. I want to
No,
hear
that's
from
not
more.
enough, but what I'm getting
But all,
is,
may I finish?
I'm sorry.
He, right there, said, council needs to begin.
And that's really.
That's leadership. How many members of council are here?
Yeah.
Most of you are. You want
Not
to
most of
begin,
council,
so why,
not most of
why
council.
couldn't you bring somebody in just for council and other people who, like ourselves, who are interested in healing? And then,
Because what
We
we
can
would
branch
do,
out.
because Kathleen, I've been putting my toes in the water. If we pay somebody, you know, $200 or $500 to come in for a day, and this many people turn up, you know?
well, then, see, here's where the leadership needs to get those people out.
That's what I'm talking about.
Look at
That's
what
what I'm
you can do
talking
with this
about,
number of
you know?
people.
I think that's one of our biggest problems at Bethlehem is committees, this leadership, people volunteering to do anything, it's gone. And the people that are there now, not apathy, that, and you may not want to hear this or something,
I'm not saying it's apathy, I'm asking you.
but no, I'm not saying that. I think a lot of people have served in the past and feel they've done their time. Well, there's different reasons, right? We are an older congregation. Basically, you might not want to hear this, but I see the only way Bethlehem is to survive down the road is to merge with some church. That's
Well, that's a possibility, you know,
right.
I'm not.
I don't see the people at Bethlehem jumping on board to do anything anymore.
Well, that's what I want to know, Ray. I want to know, do we as Bethlehem, an entity by ourselves, want to put the energy into developing so that we can maintain as an individual entity? Or, you know, 10 years down the road, do we want to be at the point where really there isn't enough of Bethlehem left to be an individual entity, or 5 years down the road, or whatever, you know?
I see nothing but maintenance right now. I really do that.
That's what I see then too. But see, that's not what they said when they called
I
me, so,
know.
you know, that's what I want to clarify. That's all I'm saying. Thank you for saying that, because, you know, you're validating what I'm hearing. It's hard to say that, I know. It's hard to hear it. It's hard to realize it. And I'm saying, guys, if you want maintenance, if that's what you want, great, just tell me, you know. And I can do just some internal healing that, for those who want to, and we'll maintain, you know.
And I
But if you want, sorry, Kathleen, you think?
And I think in the process, you will lose members.
Oh,
Because I
yeah.
didn't want to stay in a congregation that's just maintaining. With you, you know,
Hi, we're just looking.
Me too.
That's okay, that's okay.
that to me should
Well,
never be in God's
okay.
church that we're just maintaining.
Let's move through the day and see what we come up with,
That's
okay?
that's what
I just wanted to lay that on the table, and either way, there's no criticism on my part. Either way, you know, I came here to do what Bethlehem wants, but I need to get clear about what that is. Is that fair? Wayne?
You know, sometimes when we say we want this, we do this because we say what we think somebody else wants to hear. We aren't honest enough to say, you know, no, I mean, that sounds good. But what I see is, you know, and if you want to call this maintenance, that's fine. We need to do what we do well and then move on. I mean, I'm not a fluff person. There are fluff people. Maybe with fluff, without fluff, we're going to die. I don't know. But I think, you know, look how much trouble we had to get people, a lot of programs, you know, where you're busy every night of the week at church and this kind of stuff. For me, I can't.
But see, you don't have to. If there's enough people, you shouldn't have too many programs for the number of people you have, so you have to be there every
But
night.
this is what I'm going to say, you know, how many people did we ask to get leadership for the James Church appeal? I'll bet we didn't get 50%, did we? I don't know. You know, I didn't do a lot of asking. I'll bet it was.
I don't think so.
So, you know, it's hard to get people to do things, and the same people can't keep doing all the time. Yeah. I think we have church full time. If I did this someday, say, I'm going up there.
I understand, you know, I don't even have my vacations. If in fact Bethlehem says, we're happy the size we are, and we don't want what you would call fluff. We want a few programs, but not a lot. Then when people come to me and say, let's do this or let's do that, Pastor, you do it, I'll say, no. You know, there aren't the people to support it. But I need your permission for that, you know. I would be very happy to say, if the leadership in the church made a decision that we will have a new program start, if, you know, there's a church I know of where they have a policy that says something can start at our church if you have, I forget if it's 2 or 3 members who want it, and if they bring a plan to council or to whoever the leadership is, and they are willing to do the legwork. You know, then they all have this church has several staff people because it's a bigger church. It's grown because they've been healthy. They will have a staff person to liaise with them and support them, but the staff person doesn't have to do it. Okay. So we could make some sort of a policy like that. And if I know that's the policy, and people aren't saying, well, Pastor Donna's not doing that, you know, because that's what's happening. People are saying, well, Pastor Donna, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing that? And I try and nobody comes, or 1 or 2 people come, you know, and then they go home and they expect me to keep doing it, you know. They want to come and be served. Well, a pastor can't do that. I can't get around to visit the shut-ins if I'm doing that, you know. So, yeah, Wayne, we really need to decide what fluff we're going to have, if you want to call it that. What's our fluff policy?
This is what I say last time. You can't have only maintenance. You've got to have some growth.
No, if we get healthy in our interrelationships, if we can get our interrelationships healthy, if we can be open enough to looking at ourselves, and that includes me in that, you know, so we all as a, you know, but it includes me to the point that the policies for pastoral leadership will be developed, but somebody will replace me eventually, you know, okay, so you're going to have to retrain that person. But if we can get so we are respectful and healthy in our relationships with each other, we'll grow. There's no question. God will send the people. But if people walk into our church and they see backbiting and infighting, then they're not going to stay. They're going to go someplace else. People, especially people who are new Christians, they don't expect that from Christians. They think they're going to come to a place where we're loving toward each other. We don't compete with each other. We say, a little bit of what I want and a little bit of what you want, and let's build something we can all live with comfortably. But if we develop that, we'll grow. There's no question. That won't be maintenance.
I've seen this at Bethlehem for some time, and I said this before. I want what I want, and I want you to get it for me.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I've been saying that for quite a while. But,
Can you understand how it is to be a pastor with that, then? You know? And I'll really try. I will try to my little hat breaks to get it for you. But I can't do it single-handedly.
Is part of the problem the age of the congregation? We don't have enough doers.
Part of the problem is that in the age of the congregation is that there's a lot of people who see Bethlehem as, rather than the ministry of Christ, as their social club, because they've been hanging around for so long, it's now their club. And just to give you an example, and I don't care what the decision of council is about this issue, okay? And I presented it at the end of a meeting, so that was, you know, not very good on my part. But I presented something, a proposal that some new members had for something they wanted to do, that they would facilitate, they would do the work themselves and raise some funds, because they can't contribute very much, they're a young family. And council just said, no, we don't do this. We don't do fundraisers. Now, had that been Don Krill that said, I want to do this fundraiser, they would have said, let's talk about this. Had that been you, or, you know, somebody, not necessarily a council member, but, you know, somebody that was known. But it wasn't even looked at. And I'm actually going to come back to council and say, I don't care what you decide about this, but give it some consideration. Because these people, I can't go back to them and say, gee, the council gave it, what, 30 seconds? I can't. And that was partly my fault, the way I, you know, put it in there.
I thought someone said that we were running late and that we were
Right.
going to talk about it.
Right.
We weren't next.
Well, and I hope we will. You know, I'm going to bring it back and say, let's talk about it. And again, it's not I don't have an agenda for whether we do it or not, but we really need to, you know, part of it is, you know, we hardly know these people. Who are they? And we have to, that's not Bethlehem. Bethlehem is so warm and welcoming to people, you know. But
I think,
we
I
really
don't
need to do that.
feel that way at all. I think that's a false assumption that you made.
That people aren't
That
learning.
people were saying, oh, we don't know these people and that's why we don't want to do this. I can say personally that looking at those materials, that did not look like a good idea to me because it was a commercial kind of enterprise in the church, and that I would like to try to figure out some other way this young family can contribute than to raise money, that part of it's for this company and part of it's for the church, to sell stuff.
Okay,
in-
well,
in the
yeah,
thing.
and that's a
And
very
I-
valid
it
point, but
never-
that's not what you said the other
It
night.
never crossed my mind that it would have anything to do with the fact that these were newer members of the congregation. That never entered my mind
Okay.
when I looked at the materials and rejected it.
And I could have judged it very wrongly, and it was late in the evening, I'm saying that. But I'm just saying that we really need to be open to all options, you know. And churches do fundraisings all the time with companies. So, you know, I mean, we're doing a fundraising with the James Company. There's no question that the James Company is getting paid for helping us with our stewardship campaign. You know, if people produce something, they get paid, and if we have a sale at our church, and, you know, I mean, if we have a bake sale and people who put out the flour get paid, you know. So, but I understand what you're saying, and that's a very valid point, but that wasn't how it came out the other night, and that, I'm just trying to say that I think we need to develop, what should I say, more of a process, gentler way of relating to each other. Maybe I used a bad example, because it wasn't well presented. I didn't present that well, and it was late in the evening. But we really need to develop a gentler way of relating to each other, okay? And maintain all the good, as you said, carry that on into the future. If we develop a real, gradual, gentle, open way of relating to each other, God will send the people. And they'll stay, because there is so much good at Bethlehem. You know, and Bethlehem will grow, and Bethlehem will grow as much as we want it to grow, you know.
I think perhaps the growth first has to come in faith and vision. And then, I still think it needs to begin with the leadership. And we all can do some healing.
Well,
And I think that maybe that has to be intentional. You know, instead of just, well, let's do this and do that, but let's actually get into this healing.
and the leadership are tired too, there's no question.
Well, I don't question that, but that's why we're tired. Part of it, because a few people are doing everything. And until we start healing, until we are healed, we're not going to do too much. I think it will continue this.
Well, part of my plan for that healing, the fatigue part, is that we're going to go slow over the next year as far as any sort of further development. We've got things running smoothly now, okay? We need to do a little bit of more work in organizing the youth program, but that's sort of organization stuff. But stuff is happening. And rather than add a whole bunch of stuff over the next year or however long, a year, 18 months, however long it takes, we're going to go slow because people are tired. And we can maintain what we've got and be a good church and be spiritual at the moment. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we keep talking about healing, and I know exactly what you're saying, but I'm the one who gets the phone calls, and what I have realized is that there are many people in our congregation who think we have a new pastor. This is a new beginning, everything is fine, we don't need to heal because we have a complete change and everything is good now. But it's not, and we know it isn't. But they don't even realize that we need to heal. They don't realize that we have to mourn.
But that's why we need to bring it up to them.
And how do we handle those things?
Exactly.
But we can't bring it up to them unless
Until they
they
want
come.
Well,
They don't want to
that's
hear
right.
it.
In church. You know, maybe some.
Okay, are you going to support me if I start preaching it? Even gently?
Well, I think so. I don't know exactly what you're going to say, but.
I'll show you my sermons.
Okay. That's right.
I think this is along the same line here that I don't personally feel like I need a whole bunch of talk on healing, but I do think there is a bit of distrust that needs to be, we need to build more trust. And in doing
That's
that,
the main healing.
I think that it requires extreme sensitivity from the leadership. And again, I don't want to keep, right now I feel like I keep coming back to you and placing things on your head, but that,
But it's okay, my head's pretty strong.
okay, that it requires a great deal of sensitivity, and because some of the things that, not just what you say, but the manner in which you say it at council, for example, can be such that people are intimidated or afraid or retreat or get angry, that I would have a great hope in the future with you leading us, that because of your training in counseling and so forth, that if some changes are made that really are what you're saying, if you hear yourself talk about gentle and sensitive and encouraging and positive, that the leadership will connect with you more and be able to help move the congregation in these good ways. But just even today, if you're interpreting something in such a negative way, that's not the best.
Well, and how can I interpret something other than it is? I have to say it like it is, because we can't change it if I don't name it. And we have to be open to the naming. I mean, I'm trying to hear you naming something about me.
Right.
But you say council doesn't want me to name council's behaviors or congregational behaviors.
I'm just not sure that some of the naming, if you will, is accurate. And I'll use that example again about that fundraiser thing.
No, that may not be accurate. I
And
agree.
there's really no reason for you to assume that this rejection had to do with the young people themselves.
No, I may be wrong about that.
And that we are quite sensitive to fundraising kinds of activities in the church in general. That's our history. We have not been very active in things like bazaars, for example. We've done some, but it's never been a real hearty participation because of the sensitivity for our Lord saying, you know, don't bring money into the temple and be selling things and doing that. And so, because some people are quite literal with that we have not had that kind of thing. So to spare us more criticism and negative and hard things, I think were the motivation for some of us to reject that proposal without a lot of thought, because it seemed obvious that this would be something that would not be highly supported and valued as a means of allowing these people to contribute.
Okay, so this has taken you, what, 2 minutes, maybe 3 to explain to me?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody take that time on Monday night? See, it has to go both
I
ways.
believe I did say something.
You said we made a policy, we don't have sales, that's it.
No.
You know,
I heard some of what Annette said on Monday night, and I think some of our problem at council meetings, when some people are talking, other people are talking, and you can't hear what everybody.
I did hear you, I did hear you, Tom.
Yes.
You know, the way you've explained this now, I get it completely, okay? And I'm really open to hearing stuff. And then I could go back to that family and I could say, this is what this is based on in the church, and it's not about you personally or that, you know, you're not wanted here. This is just, we have this for these reasons, you know? And it probably would be a good scriptural lesson for them to think about too. But you know, it was just basically said, no, this is not good, this is commercial, we have this policy, but nobody said why, or, you know, and it was late, and again, Annette, I've said already, it probably, just as much my fault, because I brought it up at a bad time and in a hurry, okay?
It's only
I'm not
one-
blaming anyone.
It's only
but-
one example.
But it's a communication thing.
Right.
And so maybe I need to listen better, okay? I'm real open to that. But I cannot back off and not name behaviors, okay? And I have to, and you can call me on the carpet, but I have to be able to be doing the same and recognizing that it's not unloving. We're not loving each other. I mean, Cliff and I had a thing this morning where he said something and I disagreed with it, and then we had a little 2-minute thing, you know, I mean, and we love each other.
Who stood on their head?
We've learned over many years to do that with each other, and couples, hopefully couples do. Some never do, but most, you know, the ones that last usually do. But that, a church has to be able to function that way. But what I've found coming in is, we don't want to hear this. We want you to come in and fix it, but we don't want to hear what needs to be fixed. Okay, yes, Ray?
I think the healing, everything needs to come from leadership, the council, not from you. Instead of being a dictatorship coming down and saying how things are going to get done. And I think there's a lot of resentment that way, that things are being pushed that way, that I think the committees, the council, they're the ones that need to make the decisions, and what you have to do is mediate when you see inappropriate behavior.
And I'm trying to do it. The committees and the council
Well,
don't have the skills. They can't make the decisions appropriately.
Yeah, that's true, but I still see it more right now going in a direction of dictatorship down.
How does making a suggestion evolve into a dictatorship? I made a proposal, I put it in your boxes for most of a month, and I said, let's consider this. Let's try it. I made another proposal at the council meeting, I gave it to you Monday, well, I think I handed it out Monday. And I said, let's look at this for this month, and let's talk about it next week. Let's at least give it a try. Let's try something, let's stand on our heads, you know, let's try something different. That's not a dictatorship, Ray. That's what a pastor is supposed to do. Pastor means shepherd. A pastor is supposed to lead.
But not make the decisions.
No, but we have to try something, and I have the skills to make a proposal of something to try. Council could say, let's read this, okay, you've got a month. Now let's say, well, let's amend this and try that instead. Let's change it a little. I'm really open to that, but somehow I have to start, Ray.
Right, that's why I think if this next year coming up, we go at a lot slower pace and fine tune some of the decisions that we're making instead of just, I think that's what we need to do. We need to really step back.
Well, one of the things we need to do is stop micromanaging. We need to let our committees do their managing. But that means our committees have to manage health code. And there are certain things that do have to come into council. Like financial things must come through council. That's our constitution. That sort of thing. But that's why I put that proposal in your boxes for this month, that, you know, the committees make our reports. We look at them. If there's a problem, we discuss them. But otherwise, we zip through that stuff. Wayne, we do need to move on with what I planned for today, but this is good discussion, and we've started something here, you know, Wayne.
Kathleen talked about healing, Margaret talked about healing, and people call and say, you know, don't realize it. And maybe I'm one of those, I guess. They're women, I'm men, men and women think differently. I guess I just wonder, what do we need to do, where are we not healed? I guess I've lived with so many adversities, I just walk away and it's over. Go on. But maybe I'm missing something here. What
The
do you
big
mean by
thing is the distrust. I think that's where the healing.
Is that the healing we need?
People don't trust each other. If you think back to what we've been through, the trust level, my trust level, went way down with a pastor. And, you know, is that for everybody? Is it back to where it was before we had our
So we distrusted the last pastor, maybe we're real cautious about our
We're
current
cautious
pastor.
and with each other. You know, we had some members that we were really good friends with, and now they're not with us any longer. So do we trust our friends now to stay and be with, you know, work through this together? There's a whole bunch of, I think, trust level things that we need to work through. And I would support you from the pulpit if, when it's done, you
Lovingly.
know, and because that's where the people are, in church on Sunday morning.
I am, I'm standing here being very vulnerable with you today. Hopefully, that will help you to begin to trust me. But the lack of trust is endemic at Bethlehem. It's between committees, it's between, as you say, even friends. It's people don't trust the pastor, people don't trust the pastor-council relationship, people don't trust the pastor-president relationship, people don't trust, because all these things, I'm told, have been abused in the past. But I'm coming in and I'm stepping into that spot and I can't be held accountable for that. And I have skills that I was called here to use. That's what I was told by the call committee and by our bishop. And so I need you to just be open and say, okay, Pastor Donna isn't judging us, but she's seeing things here. And she wants to help. I want to help. I don't want to criticize. I don't want to put you down. I want to help. And I'm not perfect. I'll make mistakes. And you can tell me. As I said, I'll bring my sermons to you. I don't mind. Now, I will be completely open and vulnerable, but I also need to be heard. There's two sides. And
And this is the last thing I want to say about this, because I do feel like I'm sort of making these comments that directly involve you.
That's okay.
But when Ray just said about at council, if we have a suggestion or proposal, it's not always the proposal itself, it might be the way in which it's presented. Because what I heard at the last council meeting with regard to more money to the musicians was something like this from you. We have to do this. We have no choice. Well, that doesn't engage us.
Okay, well, what can I say? We have to do it. Or we don't have musicians for Sunday.
No, I feel that this is what I'm saying, how you could do it instead of we have to do this, we have no choice. Say, we really value our musicians. I am afraid that they might not stay with us unless we increase their wages. Could we discuss this? How do you all feel about it? That would be my comment on that.
My assumption was that you have been discussing this for quite a long time because people have been saying this to me for months. Now, you haven't been discussing this as a
No,
church?
this was the previous council, started discussing that 2 years ago.
Our council never took it up in finance or.
So this was a new idea for this council?
Yes.
See, I never knew that. I thought that you people all realized that this was,
And I think you can even compromise on that. This is going out, I don't mind, and I agree with it. Give them the, if they get 50 now service, I see no problem giving them 100 a service, but then maybe we eliminate the Wednesday and just do a prayer service
we're
where there
not
is no
paying for
music.
Wednesday. We're not paying for
No,
Wednesday.
but you propose that we do. Now, I'm saying, so there is still
Well, I'm
discussion.
not proposing that right now.
No, okay. Okay, yeah, I think a lot determines how we do, to be honest with you, with this James Company. Are we gonna be
I
able
understand
to
that.
grow and get these programs, or are people, and I think this will be part of the trust, or are people just gonna say, we've had enough? I think a lot will be determined over this fall.
Well, I apologize for the situation with musicians. I had no idea that council didn't realize the situation.
Judy would be the only one who would have realized.
Right, because she's on worship and music.
Yes.
And you discussed it there. But
Not.
Oh,
not really.
I was presuming that the whole church knew that for many years Bethlehem has been, because Gordon's been willing to do it.
And I would say, even if this council had been talking about it, a better way to make a proposal is to engage. the
Well, it wasn't a
council.
proposal. It was a reality, Annette. We will not have a musician on Sunday unless we pay him $100. That's it. We won't. We don't have Gordon anymore. And Nicholas is willing to work for a little while for less, but, personally, I don't think it's just if we're paying somebody else more. And the new guy isn't willing to. He will not come for less than $100. And that's the minimum. I've actually gone on to since Monday, hadn't done this by Monday, so I couldn't say it, but I've gone on to the webpage of the Organist Guild. And that is minimum for a part-time organist. So he's being fair. He's being realistic. And I guess we do have an option, Annette. Our option is, and sometimes people don't like to hear we don't have a choice, but I was trying to say the truth. Our option, I guess, the choice we do have is, do we have a musician on Sunday or don't we? You know, that's it. I mean, I was over a barrel in that. And see, that's one thing that council doesn't realize sometimes, and other people in the church don't either. And it's not just me, okay? What you don't realize about the pastor is that we are there, you know, every day. That's our job. That's what we do. None of you cares about it as much as I do. None of you. You know, that's like your dental practice, you know? And sometimes you have to bite the bullet for things, don't you? You know, sometimes you need a new modern piece of machinery that's going to be exorbitantly expensive, but the dentist down the street has it, and you got to get it. And you realize that. Your receptionist may not realize it, even your bookkeeper may not realize it, but you know that because you're the one who's the dentist.
Well, because
You know,
that was,
and so obviously I didn't do that very tactfully on it. But something that you guys have to realize about me or any pastor, whatever pastor you get, is that we have a vested interest in making this church work, and especially making worship work, because that's why we're there. That's, you know, that's the core, you know. And I have to say, I was hurt, because there was no question whatsoever about pulling out more money from the budget to pay the gas bill. That wasn't a choice, right? And I tried to make that comparison. Worship isn't a choice at a church. Now, I suppose we do have the choice of worship without music, you know. But, you know, we don't have But please give me the space to understand Pastor Donna may sound strident to us, but it's because she's passionate about this. She really cares about this, you know. And she's over a barrel here. You know, I had this musician standing at my right hand that I knew would not come on Sunday for less than $100. And I have 150 people out there who are going to turn up on Sunday and say it's Pastor Donna's fault we don't have any music. Because it's my desk that the buck stops on for worship. That's how most of the people out there see it, whether you do or not. If the church doesn't work, I'm the one who's going to get the blame, not the council, not the members. It's going to be Pastor Donna's fault. When Bethlehem hit the rocks 2 years ago, who was blamed? And not that he didn't have a good part of the responsibility. He did, yeah. I'm not saying that, but it was nothing is ever. You know, when there's a divorce, it's never one-sided. You know, no. So I am passionate about this. I was saying I am not giving you an option on this any more than we can have make the church 50 degrees in winter because gas is expensive or oil is expensive or whatever we put in our furnace. And you people have to respect that about me as well. That's the position I'm in. And I felt very disrespected in that situation. You know, we had one person who said, we don't need music, Judy can play the music. What does that say about what I do? What am I doing here? What am I doing here? If worship is that unimportant. You know, I'm not blaming any of you. This is not a bitch at you people. I'm just trying to tell you what goes on in my heart when that kind of thing happens. And if some of you feel put down by me, this is what I live with day by day. I work for hours and hours and hours to write a sermon. And then somebody says, we didn't like that word you used. That one word in your sermon offended me. You know? I don't even remember I used that word, you know? That's what a pastor lives with. And some of that, I think, is what Pastor Cole ran into at Bethlehem. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have any skills. He didn't stand up here with you like this, okay? And say, let's work together, let's try to work this out, let's figure out what this is about. And if this is all we do today, we're not wasting our time, by the way, okay? But some of this is what I am absolutely sure he ran into because I have talked to your past pastors. I've talked to 3 of them. And you don't want to hear this. You know what one of the pastors said to me? I didn't know what passive-aggressive meant until I went to Bethlehem. So some of this stuff was there before Pastor Cole, and I'm not blaming anyone. It's in most churches. It's in lots of churches. Maybe in all churches.
Isn't that human nature?
It's human nature. But what I'm saying is you called me here, and the bishop sent me here because you said, we want the skills you have to help us, call us on this stuff and help us fix it. And the bishop told me, and I believe, having been at Bethlehem, that all the raw material is here, that ever a church could be the healthiest church in the synod, it's Bethlehem, as far as our interrelationships are concerned. And I am willing to kill myself to make that happen. I'm willing to exhaust myself and work my feet and my fingers to the bone. But I can only do it if the church wants it. And that's what I want to determine. Is that fair? Is that fair? I mean, that's all I'm saying. And if the church says, no, we like the way we are, we want to go on with all the stuff that's going on, the stuff that passed, you have, and Pastor Cole told you this, and the pastors denied it to you, but they told me that the reasons that some of them pulled out were because Bethlehem didn't want to go any further. Okay. Now that they didn't criticize Bethlehem for that, and every pastor you've ever had, well, except Pastor Cole, has loved you dearly and still loves you, because this is a wonderful group of people. I love you, but I also, if I go down burning, I'll go down burning, trying to say, please use what you have that's so good, and make it better, make it healthy. Build the kingdom of Christ at Bethlehem. Not just a nice, warm, lovey-dovey family, but the kingdom of Christ. And Jesus was pretty strident in it. He went into the temple with whips. I haven't used whips yet. Because this isn't the money changers. This is not, it's not that. It's not unethical and bad stuff. But it is my job to come in and say, hey, you guys, I'm the shepherd, and here's my crook, and I got to grab you by the neck and pull you back before you go over a cliff. That's my job. And sometimes you don't like hearing it, and sometimes it sounds strident, but please, give me the benefit of the doubt. I may not always be the most tactful person. When I came and talked to you, I said, I'll be real open. I'll be real upfront with you. That's my gift, if you will. It's not always easy to take. But I will never, never do it unlovingly. And I won't do it judgmentally. I'm not blaming anybody. But I have so many skills. And if you want them, tell me and I'll share them with you. If you don't want them, then just say, sit back, Donna, do Sunday worship, come and visit us at the hospital, bury us and marry us and baptize our babies, and if people come to the church, be nice to them. And I'll do that. But that's what I want over the next month to determine, and I need all of you to help me, okay? To determine that. I need you to be listening to the people and asking and saying, well, what do you want? I need you to be telling the people, yeah, Pastor Donna isn't always the soul of tact. But you know what? She sees things and she names them and she loves us. And she's not even always right. But when she's wrong, she'll listen to us. And we can figure out what is right. I mean, I might see something and it's like, oh, God, this hurts. But maybe I'm not assessing right what it is, but I know it's not right, but I might not be able to identify. You see, I saw something the other night that I didn't know what it was, and you just explained it to me. So you might have to explain some things to me. But it's got to be a two-way dialogue, and I need your help with this because I have to deal with, what did you say, we have about 200 active members out there? Mm-hmm. And they don't all know me as well as you do now. You know me better than anybody at Bethlehem as of this moment. Because I have just laid myself out here like a doormat for you.
How many times have I told you you're wrong?
Oh, many. And do I listen?
Just want them to know.
Do I listen?
Sometimes.
Well, maybe by the next day I listen. Yeah. Maybe not at that moment, but by the next day I do. I do it.
Me back and says,
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, I will eventually, I'll at least take it in and think about it, and then I'll come back to it.
At least in some people's opinion. No, but, as far as we gotta decide what we're gonna do, and if you want the council to decide, you know, I individually can tell you what I think we ought to have for me. But that doesn't mean
Yeah,
everybody
right,
else.
well, that we all need
You
to
know,
be asking and
I
listening.
can work, you know, this is what I prefer, but I can go along with other things. So I mean, it's gonna be awful hard to get the council, you know, who cares or whatever, and has an opinion, to make a decision for the whole congregation.
Can't we, over the next months, be watching people, listening, seeing behaviors, seeing if people are open, and asking people to be open, and if they say no, I mean, just saying, let's work a process here and see what happens. We can't come to a decision today. I don't know what the answer is today. I didn't expect this conversation to take this long. I expected to just say to you, listen, guys, I don't know what Bethlehem wants. I want to know what Bethlehem wants because I want to do what Bethlehem wants. But I need your help. And I don't know how we'll do that, except to kind of put up our antennae and be open to noticing and even asking people, look, is this really the way you want to be, or do you want to have some healing or growth or whatever they want to call it? Do you want to change? Change is hard, right? You know, it knocks people off for a little while. It takes a while till we get used to the change, and then it becomes the norm, and then we're okay and we move on. Right.
I think we're on the right path. That I think that people's actions, you're sort of saying, will speak louder than their words. And I think over, like I said, this fall, with not only the money giving, but when they do their volunteer of time, we'll see what people are interested in volunteering. And I got a feeling we're going to see the same type of participation. It hasn't changed in a few years, and I don't see it changing.
We'll know something. And then if we do, we can come back and we can say, look, we put out these time and talent sheets. We went to all this energy with a stewardship campaign, and this is the results we want. Let's sit down together, let's spend an afternoon as a congregation and figure out what this means. You know, and some of them may say, oh my gosh, is that what we've been saying? It's not what we meant to say. And others may say, yeah, that's exactly what we want. We want to maintain just being as we are and for as long as that lasts. So we'll see what, and it may not be 100%, it might be the majority we look at. When you do this kind of thing, you're going to, who said some people will leave? You know? Whichever solution, whichever situation we come to, some people will leave. When you set a direction for a congregation, some people always leave, okay? If we believe we are setting the Lord's direction, and that's what we're talking about, okay? And that's, we have to figure out what that is for Bethlehem, because that could vary from church to church, you know. For Willow Creek, the Lord's direction is probably very different than the Lord's direction for Bethlehem, you know. So if we believe that we, as leadership, are going in a direction that's, you know, gospel-oriented and spiritual and prayerful, then if people leave and say something else, Willow Creek suits me better, or First Lutheran suits me better, then we can say, God bless you, because we know that the Lord will send the people to fill our pews to whatever level the Lord wants our pews filled. You know, we can be at peace about that. It's not about numbers. You know, but if we go on and we don't evaluate our directions and we don't look at our behaviors, and people come and visit us and they say, you know, something here doesn't feel, they may not know what it is, and something doesn't feel right. It's not the way I think a Christian church should be, and they're leaving for that reasons. Then I would have a problem when it comes up to the end of my contract. Okay? But you guys need to identify what you want with me. And that what you're saying is you just want me to go a little more gently and more slowly. You do want to move on, and I appreciate that. And I've always appreciated when you give me feedback. And you are one person who does try to. But don't do it in the middle of a council meeting, because there's so much. It isn't that I won't hear it there. It's just that there's so much going on. I may not hear it well. So to call me and talk to me, say, let's have tea and talk. And that's fine, you know. But because I really want to hear. But the fact that there's so few people here today when they had, what, 6 months notice? Or 4 months, 3 months notice, 4 months, whatever, several months' notice tells me something about people's commitment or level of fatigue. I'm not sure what it is. And it's not, I'm not judging those people who aren't here, but it tells me something about the level of ability of people to be involved. Okay, so that tells us something already. You said, how are we going to know? We've got one sign, you know. Let's look and over the next 6 months, say. That's, you know, and in the meantime, we can be working to develop a policy for progress at Bethlehem, and whatever that progress is, whether it's progress along the same path or along a little different path or along a very different path. Is that fair? Okay. So, away from all of this, I want you to bring yourself, and Ray, I'm sorry that I'm using music. I know that music is not
No, that's fine.
something that touches you, but I'm going to ask you to be open to the process of music just for today, a little bit, because I'm going to use it a little bit today, not an awful lot. I didn't build a lot of music into me because I know that that's not meaningful for you, but there's
You won't
some
ask him
because
to
it's
sing,
meaningful.
will you?
Pardon?
You won't ask him to sing.
No, just listening, just
Yeah,
listening.
I mean, to me, there's nothing wrong with if you hear the organist play and they play beautiful music. I just don't have the talent, you know, for that.
Oh, so you don't mind listening to music?
No.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm going to play a song now, and to me, it's the song that is at the heart of our faith. The song of, it's not a song about Jesus, it's a song about how we as church, the Church of Christ, should be. So I want you to just, just take a deep breath, move away from all we've been talking about, and move into this beautiful space. And begin the process. Begin the process of spiritual growth and whatever. Out of which will come, the Lord will give us the discernment if we begin the process. Okay? So let's just listen. I hope this is a really short. I need to go on. That's not what I'm trying to play. I'm sorry.
We enjoyed that one.
That's a good one.
Yes.
Holly. Okay, we're on CD, I guess, aren't we? Function, radio. Tape, there we go. Okay, now we're ready. Are we ready? Okay. I thought that was the volume and I pressed the wrong thing, so there's the volume. Okay. Ready?
As we gather here together, may we always remember to love should love should grow, and love should find, and love should flow like a river. Just like a river we will run to the ocean of your love. We will be free. We will be free.
that song say to you?
Take a step back and enjoy.
Sending songs and so enjoying it. There's so much imagery in that, in the river, isn't there? And in the love flowing. Water is one of our chief Christian symbols, isn't it?
It was neat hearing the kids and children bringing message and bringing them along. Life. Life.
I had fun last Sunday because I went into all the Sunday school classes, visited all the children, all the way up to the high school. You know, when I don't often get to do that partially because I'm busy, but I also don't want to invade the teacher's space too often. But it's fun. The kids are really neat. I would like to create a place for more of them to just want to come to Bethlehem, because this is a place where children are just, you know, we have so many grandparents, don't we? You know, that's a strength. That's a strength of Bethlehem, is we have so many grandparents for these kids, and so many of them are now all these new homes around us. A lot of those people are going to be moving in from far away without their grandparents nearby. You know? So, and I'm a dislocated grandmother who doesn't mind bringing them in, you know.
I remember how my children still feel. My two girls often still talking about the senior ladies. The love they felt there.
We are now the senior ladies.
Now they're the senior ladies. But also the fact that they couldn't get away with a thing.
But isn't that, you know, creating the structure that keeps them in the fold, in the sheepfold?
Oh, they say it with pride.
Let's think about the image of water. Living in the Pacific Northwest, you have a lot of floods. A lot of floods. At least once a year, sometimes twice. Very serious floods. And I went to a place where there had been a very bad flood. There's a valley, just kind of between the ocean and the mountains. There's a very fertile valley there. There's a lot of farms, dairy farms, and orchards, and that kind of farms. And they get flooded so often. And so I went and I asked one of the farmers, you know, why don't you move? You know, like there's lots of farm places in the United States, and you love farming, and that's great, but do you need to get flooded every year like this? Because, I mean, even some of his cattle have got killed, and, you know, that sort of thing. But it's very lush there when it's not flooding, and he said, look at these fields, and they were really, really green at that point. His farm, where his house and his barn and everything are, is kind of up on a little knoll, and you can look out over the pasture lands, and it was very, very green. He said it's green because of the floods. Every time it floods, it brings down lots of nutrients and keeps it. We don't have to use very much fertilizer. We don't have to, you know, recycle our crops and have fallow fields and that sort of thing because of the floods. And the farmers who have lived there have learned to accept the floods as a part of the pattern of healthfulness for their fields, for their crops, for their cattle, for everything. And I was thinking about that image for Bethlehem. I think Bethlehem's been through a flood. And a few cattle have even been killed. Some crops have, you know, been devastated. But I think there might, because of that, if we can access the whatever has been brought down from that could be for growth, you know, we can be stronger than ever before in Bethlehem. Not only can a flood wash clean, but it also brings in nutrients. If we can get wisdom, if we can access wisdom after the flood, think of what Bethlehem can become. And I'm not talking about size, because this guy's farm didn't get bigger. It just got richer, you know, and greener, and more verdant, if you will.
Well, water is life-sustaining, and it's also cleansing.
Mhm.
We need a lot more water than we do food.
And I really like that, I feel very comforted when you say it can be richer and not necessarily bigger. And yet, in order to enrich, we know that we need new people and young people to take on some of these tasks. But sometimes I think it's scary for people to just think, oh, you know, the vision might be just to be big. And so I appreciate that, because I think most of our congregation also feels that way. We do not have a vision of being a different kind of church that's just big and busy. We are a different, intimate kind of
Family
affair.
church.
Yeah, yeah.
If we became bigger, we would have to really be very vigilant to maintain whatever that warm, the water that's flowing in the river.
Right,
you know.
and you know, somewhat bigger is no problem.
Yeah, we've got enough room in our sanctuary for more people.
Right, but the size.
But I
of
don't
it
know
is-
that Bethlehem would ever want to come to the point where we needed to build a bigger sanctuary.
Right.
But we might in the future. I mean, we are
Yeah,
not the future.
we don't
of Bethlehem,
know, you know,
so we don't know.
way in the future.
But there are churches and pastors whose whole sense of call is to build a big church.
Right.
And you know, that's gospel based too. They believe that you should take the message to everyone. And then they'll all want to come to your church. I believe that, you know, that we might even, in fact, we've had people call who said we want to come to a church that has such and such, and I said, well, we don't have that, but I can tell you a church that does, you know. If in fact those people are finding a family and a house of God that suits their family and their needs, then I believe that I as a pastor have done my ministry. And if in fact what Bethlehem is will suit them, then I would want to welcome them. So it isn't about not taking the gospel to anyone, and I believe we do need to be, we have we have evangelism in our name. You know, we are the ELCA. But when the size, when you start getting it into your head that you get brownie points for numbers, then that, to me, that's vanity. That's some.
I think part of the problem, say, with our past split was having the two services and one a traditional, one a contemporary, yet, and I'm not putting all the blame on the pastor, but the pastor was more interested in only the one and not nurturing the other. Now, if they both were nurtured, I think we might be fine. But right now, to grow so big, to split like where we get so big we go to two services, might be more, right now, would be more hard.
Then we need more staff, and you need to have enough staff so that all the people can have enough care.
Right.
You know, and you don't do it by saying, well, this service is old-fashioned, so it's not very important anymore.
Right.
Those people are on the way up, basically, is what you're saying.
Right.
And that article, you know, it's another article I have for you that I'll put in your boxes. I didn't bring it today. Talks about change and how change frightens people, and it's not really for change that I'm frightened, but it's where will I land. And if change happens and I get the feeling that I'm being pushed out because I'm no longer important, then that change is really scary. That's why I was so very careful in the letter that I sent out to the Altar Guild about Grace moving in, changing in leadership to Margie, to really validate what Grace will be continuing to be doing and what she has contributed in the past, and that she still is very important. And when Margaret and I met with her, we said that several ways and several times to her so she would know it. Now, she may not always remember it, but we need to all keep saying it to her, you know. But change is scary because then maybe I will, for a lot of us, what I do is who I am. And that includes what hymns I sing or, you know, how I worship. What I do, the behaviors I have in my weekly pattern is who I am. And if my weekly pattern changes, then I don't know who I am anymore. So we have to be very, very cognizant of that. And as you said, and it doesn't mean about necessarily growing in size. But if we allow the river to bring in the fertile soil, and we are willing to grow in that fertile soil to whoever God wants us to be, then we'll be able to manage our size and still maintain the the heart, the warm heart of Bethlehem, the love that's flowing in the river. I think a lot of who we are individually, I'd like you to think about this individually at first, and then we'll think about it as a church, okay? A lot of how we relate spiritually and individually has to do with how I experience God. There's a lot of ways we experience God, you know. God is certainly not, first of all, I don't think God is something or someone that we can put in a box and say God is like this. That's why I think when God announced God's self to the world and was asked, what's your name, what was the response? I am. I am. I just am, you know. Don't try to name me, because you know that historically in that time, naming someone meant you could say who they were. You then had power over them, you could control who and what they were and what they would become. That's why naming your child is so important, even to this day in our society. They say, what's in a name? Well, there's a lot in the name. I remember when my son, whose name was Kevin Williams, decided he was going to change his name to Eric West. That was a much better name. I don't know why, it's a good name, but eventually he got to like his name. The day he told me he liked his name was when he got his first Emmy, and he brought it home and he said, that says Kevin Williams on there, that's mine. So he had adopted back his name. He wasn't Eric West anymore. But a name is important, isn't it? You know? And so I think that we have to be very careful about what boxes we put God into when we try to identify God for other people. But, and I'm probably going to use masculine pronouns for God here. If that's offensive to anyone, don't take it personally. It's just easy. Okay? I have no discomfort with masculine or feminine or any kind of pronouns for God, because God is God. But whether we intend to or not, each of us has images of God. And theologians who've done studies on this will say that a lot of that is determined by the ways we experienced our parents. And I know for me that's probably true, except that I've had a lot of healing from that since. I would have a lot of difficulty with masculine pronouns for God if it was about my dad. You know. But for a lot of people it is. And if someone has had an abusive mother or an abusive father, they'll have a hard time with either masculine or feminine pronouns for God. So they're just a small example. But there are some ways that we as people kind of define God in our lives, and if you will, access or use God. For example, there's God the aspirin. Keep him on a shelf, take him down when you need to for a problem, put him back up on the shelf. And you can think about that by, when do you pray? Do you pray consistently and persistently day by day? Do you wake up like Luther said and make the sign of your baptism in the morning and before you go to sleep in the evening? Or do you kind of get busy in your life? And I think we all do this somewhat. We all do God the aspirin somewhat, you know, and then suddenly you get a problem and you say, oh, pull God out. Take two prayers and put it back on the shelf, you know, that's God the aspirin. Or God the policeman. A lot of people, for them, God is a policeman or a judge. God makes the rules. This is the God of the Old Testament. Part of the God of the Old Testament. Yeah. The God who makes the rules, and boy, I better follow those rules, or I'm going to be in trouble. We have people in our church like that. You know, if we don't follow the exact rules and numbers and rigidities, then we're going to be in trouble with God as a church. But we all do that somewhat. You know, have I said enough prayers lately? Oh, I haven't gone to church for a couple of weeks. I better get there. You know, or he doesn't come to church very often. You know, we assume God is doing that judging, and we become judgmental ourselves. Rather than saying, if that person isn't at church, maybe we're not providing something that that person would enjoy here. So he or she doesn't want to come. So God the judge, or God the punisher. Why is this happening to my mother? She's such a good person. Why would she have this awful cancer? She doesn't deserve this. I'm not going to worship that God that would give my mother cancer. Or why was my baby born with only one leg? Or with half a brain? Or no kidneys? Or whatever. I used to hear that a lot when I worked in the NICU. Why me? What did I do that God would punish me this way? That's a God that I know doesn't exist. But again, that's very much an Old Testament configuration. Margaret and I were talking, I think you were there, we were talking with someone in our church recently who has a very good friend who belongs to a different denomination. Maybe you were there, I thought somebody was with me, maybe it was Margie. Anyway, there's a member of our church who has a friend who belongs to a very judgmental denomination, and they really don't experience forgiveness and grace. It's just all judgment and criticism and condemnation. That's the way they define God in their churches. I wonder why anybody goes, quite frankly. Well, they're very small. Maybe that's why. But you know, that God really is not the God of grace. That's not the God of Jesus, our Savior, the Christ. I think probably God will hold us accountable for some things. But I don't think God does it by making our children sick or giving us cancer or that kind of thing. God the warrior. There's a lot of this. You know, it used to be Yahweh is our God and we will be able to drive all the other tribes out of this nation and it'll be ours. But, you know, what if we do God right, our church will be the biggest in town? You know, we got the right God here. Those Baptists or Catholics or whatever over there, they don't have. God becomes our tribal God, not the God of other people as well. And that's very much who God was for Israel, by the way. And I think is still today, because Israel is still justified. This is our land, and if you go and live in Israel and you're not a person who's Jewish, it's just like living under apartheid in South Africa. The laws are identical. It's very much God is the tribal God of Israel. What are some of God the Santa Claus? I think of that. When I think of Santa God, I always think of, you know, what is it, that song, Santa Baby? So hurry down the chimney for me, you know. And, you know, you see this a lot with the televangelists in some churches, some of the very, very big churches, because people like Santa God, you know. You come and get our God, and you're going to be pretty, you're going to be handsome, your business is going to flourish, your children are going to be A students, you know, they'll all marry people you like. Your life will thrive if you just get our God, a Santa God.
God wants me to wear $600 suits.
Yeah, you know. There's a singer, I think his name was Ray Stevens, who sang a song called Would Jesus Wear a Rolex? I actually found it because when my cousin died, he wanted this at his funeral, and I did his funeral, so we played this song, and it was, I should have brought it actually, I have it in my tape deck, in my case of CDs at home. Someday I'll bring and play it to you, but it's, you know, I was going to give some money, I was watching a televangelist, and I was going to send him some money because it sounded like what he was saying was really good, and then I noticed that he was wearing a $5,000 Rolex or whatever they cost, you know, and his wife was wearing a big fancy fur coat, and, you know, would Jesus wear a Rolex? Which doesn't say there's anything wrong with wearing a Rolex. It just says if I want to send money to this televangelist, I want it to go out into the ministries, not to buy his Rolex type of thing. So, you know, Santa God. What are some of the other gods that we have? You guys could probably think of some others. The ways we use God. But that's enough there to give you the idea that just as bargain, God the bean counter. God the bean counter. He's got this 2 jars, okay, and he's got this pile of beans, and okay, God, you know, you bargain with God with the beans in the jars. God the, you know, it's almost like God the auctioneer. How much am I going to get for salvation from you? You know, what are you going to give me for your salvation? You know, I'm offered 7 prayers from this person. Oh, that person just offered me 10. Oh, that person's going to do it on his knees. You know? God, if you will just cure my cancer, I will go to church every Sunday for the rest of my life, and I'll say my prayers every day, and I'll even go to Sunday school.
Or you get,
I'm not going to, and I'll love you.
Or if you just get me out of this scrape I'm in, I'll always come to church.
I don't know what you'd call
Basically,
this God, but it's the God where you know you're driving into Chicago and you're really gonna need a parking space and you're late for a meeting.
The God of positive thinking.
The Norman Vincent Peale God, you know? We are what we believe, so God becomes what I believe, you know?
Yeah,
And
I
then-
had a secretary once who, she wanted a new oven, she wanted the stackable stove, the two ovens, you know.
She prayed
And
for
she couldn't afford it, but she prayed for it and she got it.
it. And that was God, was it?
That was God. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few things I want. Not necessarily need, but if you want, yeah. And then there's the real God, the God who, and please don't think that I'm comparing myself with God in any way, I'm not, but I just suddenly had this vision of, so I just started standing up here laying myself out for you guys today. And I kind of think that's what God does all the time. I mean, God is just real. God says, here I am. I'm here for you. I will love you no matter what you do. I'll come back and be there for you no matter what. I'll always forgive you. The gift is here for everyone. The grace is here free for all of you. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to do what I had to do, you know. That's why I would never compare myself with God, because I don't want to be crucified. Never, pastor should never try to be God. Eventually we'll end up on a cross somewhere. The real God, the God who did die, hang on a cross and die for us. The God who wasn't able to prevent that. The God who tried and tried and tried over the generations to call people back to the love and all the things that God really did have to answer with the prophets over and over, and even tries today over and over again with prophetic people to call us back. But eventually God said, I'm just going to have to go there, and I'm just going to have to take their sin on myself because they're not going to give it to me,
You said God wasn't able to prevent crucifixion. I think he was able, if this was part of his plan. And
Well,
his
yeah, but-
love to do it.
Well, I suppose he could have, but then what would that have accomplished?
But
Given the plan
I
around
was all
salvation.
powerful.
Well, so are you saying God could have made another plan for our salvation?
Yeah.
Okay. So God could have, but just chose to die for us.
Right.
Okay.
His
Well,
love was
maybe
so
that's
great
the level
to
of
give
love.
up his
Sure.
son. It was like Isaac and Abraham and Isaac. Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. This guy.
Yeah, but Abraham wasn't going to get up on the
No.
altar himself.
But God was the giver of Jesus.
Yeah, no, Jesus is God.
Yeah.
No, we're Trinitarian. But when Jesus died, that was God dying on the cross for us. And maybe it's human thinking on my part. That's why I never compare myself with God. But and I guess we can't think like God does. Someday I'm going to ask God, if in fact you are all powerful and like you, I believe that God is. So I can't figure out why God didn't come up with some other solution than dying on a cross, quite frankly.
He did, the man thwarted it.
Yeah, but then that says he couldn't, I mean,
Well-
again, he came to the point where we were thwarting it and thwarting it.
Free will. He gave man his free will.
Well, the theology stuff is tough.
It's very tough. See, I see the free will as very, very respectful. We chose that. We chose that, and God wasn't going to probably God could have I guess my solution is that quandary of, if God is all powerful and can do anything, my solution is, but God chooses because of respect for us, not to overcome our free will.
Where
And
is
given our free
it?
will and God's respect of that, he had to die. Because given our free will, we weren't going to come around any other way. And really, have we come around,
Sometimes it's still on.
It's that thing about, saved and sinners at the same time.
Yeah.
It's happened, and yet it's still happening until the kingdom comes.
He's not going to drag us kicking and screaming to salvation, whether we want it or not.
And that's ultimately respectful, isn't it? Intimately and ultimately respectful.
Where is it?
But how often when we get into our busy lives, do we really To me, that sometimes it's almost overpowering a God like that. A God, that much love. That much love. Some days it's more than I even want to handle. You know, I just want to go my own way and use my own free will. Other days I try to submit to that kind of love. Because see, submitting to that love, what does that mean? It means we give up our free will. It means we move our free will. Our free will is to move into God's will. Maybe that's what we need to do as Bethlehem, you know, bring all our wills together and kind of mesh them in Bethlehem, and then that would be hopefully God's will, you know. Maybe that's what we're all stubborn and independent, and we need to bring all that together and say, and what is God's will for all these talents and interests that we have. But that's very, very hard to do, and maybe that's why I get frustrated. I have a scripture passage I would like to look at. Oops. Now, how do I? I need to move closer makes it smaller, right? Okay, there's where it is. It's from Hosea, but I can't put that on. Okay. Now, focus.
You know the verse?
Not bad.
Because I can cut it up. Some of us are.
Hosea 11, 1 to 4. Okay? And some of the words are different in different translations, but this might be the New American. I don't think it's the NRS. Anyway, this is a scripture passage that we had it was presented to us in Sinawa at the pastor's retreat, and I like it so much that when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of slavery I called my child. The more I called him, the more he went from me and kept sacrificing to the Baals and offering incense to idols. Yet it was I who taught Israel to walk. I took him up in my arms, but he did not know that I healed him. I led him with cords of kindness. With bands of love, I was to him like those who lift infants to their cheeks. I bent down to him and fed him. One of the differences in some of the translations is that second, yet it was I who taught Israel to walk. They used one of the sons of Joseph, Manasseh, or I think it's Ephraim that they use in some of the, it means Israel, because that became a very prominent tribe of Israel. Anyway, I'd like you to look at this. This is an image of God. That if we can really get into this, it's very, very intimate. What I'd like you to do is take this and just take a moment and in this put your name. When Kathleen was a child, I loved her. When Dawn was a child, I loved her. And just spend a few moments like that, going down all that, reading it with your name in it.
Doesn't this sound a lot like a parent and a small child, teenager, and so forth relationship? Exactly.
Think about God taking you up and holding you against God's cheek. You know, we've done that with our children, haven't we, and our grandchildren? And then think if we are stubborn or not loving in any ways, how it must hurt God. Now I'd like you to take that passage again and put the name of Bethlehem in there. An image God relating to Bethlehem from this passage. I want you to take some time to think about that. And as you're thinking about it, I have written the passage here. These sheets are for your own use. You can write on them if you wish for your own reflections. And I'd like you to go for half an hour. You can stay in the building, or if you want, you can go walk in the garden. Come back here about 11:45 with these sheets. And the passage is written on here so that you'll have it. And try to wander, whatever you do, quietly. If you see someone else from our group, don't take time to stop and, talk to them or anything. Let this be a quiet, sacred time when you can just put yourself and also put our church into this passage.